it's like, you say something that's like not, it's like the opposite of what's true. So, woo, it was good.
Tic Tac. He's doing that on this Tic Tac video.
Tic Tac.
Go ahead and get it out of the way. Get it out of your system.
It's coming,
all
man.
right, let's get this part.
I studied. I did nothing but Google dad jokes all day today, man. I've got some good material tonight.
Oh boy.
Woo! Oh man, I hope you guys in the chat have your factions ready. But before we get there, what's up, you beautiful people? This is Gary Horn, and this is the NWA. It's a podcast celebrating the past, present, future, history, legacy, and tradition of the greatest pro wrestling entity of all time, the National Wrestling Alliance. And of course, I'm not alone. This is the NWA After Dark, or TIT NWA After Dark, as we should probably call it, because that just sounds like more of an no, okay. Well, anyway, shaking his head in disgust. That's Will Martin.
Mm-mm. That's my gimmick.
And happy as ever, looking like a sexy biker is the Doctor, and that's a legit doctorate, people. It's not. That's right. Not just the name. The Doctor, Rob Stinson.
That's right. I literally bought that degree, so it is real. I paid for that joker. So, Doc McLevin in the house, guys. This is the NWA After Dark, and I like that, actually. I like that.
Yeah, this is the NWA After Dark, where we talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. This live chat just goes as long as you guys want it to, about whatever you want it to. I mean, as long as you guys want it to an extent. I mean, Rob will have us here till like 4 a.m. So, Rob legitimately, for those of you who don't know this, like Rob legitimately sleeps in 3-hour increments. Like he does not have a normal schedule. Like you can text Rob at pretty much any time, and there's a high likelihood that he is awake, because it's that military thing. So he does not sleep like a normal person. Sure your family loves it.
So great. It's
all right.
Strain on my marriage, honestly. I'm also real like OCD about things, like I fold my socks, the way I make the bed with the 45-degree military, hospital folds. That and the sleep, those are the two great strains of my marriage. But other than that, pretty good. That's good.
And if you think that's crazy, you should get him on a Zoom chat at like 3:00 in the morning and start talking about philosophy, because this dude can go. Who were we talking about? We were talking about apologetics the other night.
We were talking about the great Cornelius Van Til and Immanuel Kant, man.
Yeah.
Talking about Josephus. Trying to get Josephus in that conversation.
That's exactly it. Well, folks, we're here. We're live. This is going to be a lot of fun. If you see the tweet out there, make sure you RT that thing. Get us some exposure. Also, I have to say this every time. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Hit the like. And for God's sake, if you're not following us at the NWA Pod on every form of social media, then what are you even doing with your lives? This is how we grow a community. So we are happy to see you. Now, all of this conversation, obviously, tonight is not going to be pretty. We're going to talk about some stuff, because we would be dishonest if we didn't acknowledge that the world is on fire right now, and there is some legitimate NWA news, and we're also going to get into things regarding that. Now, I guess I should say up front, well, and also we do have the main event topic. We didn't forget you. You guys voted. We're going to be talking about wrestling factions, and I'm most excited about that, because that makes me way less uncomfortable. But one thing we want to get out of the way up top, I think, fellas, is I've seen the requests sometimes that we get where you folks are not you folks, it's just different folks ask the question, like, when you talk about stuff tonight, talk about the news going on, and let's all talk about what we agree with or disagree with, or what we believe and don't believe. And that is not a thing I want to do. And I don't think that these fellas do either, because this is a very serious situation. And in the scheme of things, we don't have any information other than a bunch of tweets and a bunch of statements, which we're going to talk about. But there is a lot of accusations. There are accusers, and then there are the accused. And somewhere in there is the truth. And everybody has a right to speak. Everybody has a right to defend themselves. We're not going to pass judgment. We don't know. We don't know everything. Does that seem fair, guys? Is that just announcing that?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. So just getting that out of the way. So if you're in the chat and you're just like, if you want to ask us to do that, we're not going to do that. I'm just not even going to acknowledge it from here. Just not to be.
I would say if you're looking for conversation about discussing the guilt or innocence or anything like that, or speculating on that kind of stuff, you can just go on Twitter, because that's all over Twitter. This is going to be a place where we're going to talk about wrestling. We're going to talk about real things that are happening, but we're not here to speculate on actual human beings and their lives and things like that. So.
Right on. I totally agree with what Will just said. So I guess just to go ahead and get this out of the way, and this is, by the way, I don't want to belittle or dismiss or any of this stuff. That's not the purpose here. I'm gonna bring up one thing right now, just because we are who we are, and you're on the channel that you're on right now. But clearly, a big event has occurred in the National Wrestling Alliance. An independent wrestling personality named Liz Savage has accused Mr. David Lagana of some wrongdoing. And if you want the details on all of that, you can see that on Twitter. It's still there. I'm pretty sure it's her pinned tweet, or just search any of this and you'll see it. It's really not hard to find. And I'm pretty positive you've all seen it. So to update everyone on the news, if you haven't heard it already, David Lagana did issue a statement today. So if it's cool with you guys, I'm going to read that statement real quick, just so that we get it out of the way, and it's out there. And I think that I can actually share my screen here. Boom, look at that. There it is. This is I'm on pwinsider.com. You can see the NWA statement originally pursuant to allegations made by pro wrestler Liz Savage on her Twitter account, 6/18/2020. NWA VP David Lagana has resigned his position effective immediately. As well, all production of NWA content is temporarily halted pending a restructuring of executive management positions. That has been the last bit of news that we've actually had on this situation. But today we did get an official statement issued to David Lagana. We're only even hitting on this because he sent this out to several different publications asking that it be printed in full. And you can see it here on the screen, but I'm also going to read it. The hashtag Speaking Out movement has brought to light a number of new allegations of sexual assault against people in the wrestling industry, including me. These allegations of sexual assault should be taken seriously and be investigated. Every accuser has a right to be heard, but every person accused of such serious wrongdoing deserves the right to defend themselves. Last week, Liz Savage accused me via Twitter post of sexually assaulting her a decade ago. Liz and I were friends for a total of about 5 to 7 years before and after the alleged assault. We first met at a wrestling show sometime between 2006 and 2008 when she was introduced to me as an independent wrestler. I take Liz's allegations seriously. The first time I became aware of her allegations was last week when she made them public. I take them so seriously that I voluntarily stepped down from my position as vice president of Lightning One Incorporated and its company, the National Wrestling Alliance, after learning of her allegations. I did so because they predate this position, and I didn't want to involve the men and women of the National Wrestling Alliance during this time. I valued my friendship with Liz. I'm sorry that she feels that I somehow wronged her. However, the incident she described did not happen. Liz is correct that she lived with me and my female roommate from mid-August 2010 until October 1st, 2010. Liz is also correct that she shared a bed with me while she lived with me. She is again correct that nothing about our relationship was romantic or sexual. Often as we went to bed, we would cuddle and spoon in a non-sexual way. We also did so the few times we shared a bed prior to her living with me in 2010. As Liz correctly said, I never made non-consensual move on her during the waking hours. However, her claim that I made a non-consensual move on her while we shared a bed is false. I did not touch her in the way she claimed. I never touched her like that, and I never would have. But Liz's allegation of sexual assault is not the only portion of her Twitter post where I feel compelled to correct the record. In early August of 2010, Liz informed me that a friend of hers invited her out to Los Angeles to attend a show that I was not affiliated with. Ultimately, she stayed with me and my roommate starting in mid-August. Liz suggests that I did nothing to help her upon her arrival, but as a friend, I offered her all the help I could. This includes taking her to an NWA Hollywood event on August 25th, where I introduced her to those in charge. I was an unpaid producer at the time with the NWA, so I had no hiring or firing authority. Liz also left out the fact of her relationship with my female roommate. While this roommate did not initially know Liz was coming, once Liz arrived, she treated Liz like a sister. She gave Liz food and clothing and drove her to job interviews. They remained friends for years after Liz moved out. But despite their relationship, the first time my then roommate found out about these allegations was last week. Liz claims that I kicked her out of my apartment because of the alleged incident. Actually, in an email I sent to her on September 24th, 2010, I informed her that my landlord stated that per my lease, any guest staying longer than 2 weeks consecutively would need to be added to the lease. The landlord said they are willing to look the other way for 7 weeks. The 7 weeks Liz was with me and my roommate, but would not do so after October 1st. I offered her some of my frequent flyer miles if she wanted a flight home. After Liz moved out of my apartment, she and I remained in contact over social media and email for a few years, even endorsing me on LinkedIn in 2013. During that time, she would occasionally email me about opportunities in the wrestling industry that I did what I could to help with. The hashtag Speaking Out movement is creating change in our industry. I wish Liz all the best in her career inside the ring and out, but I adamantly deny her allegations against me and could not let them go without providing these details about our friendship. You can see a note here that at 4:25, Liz Savage did respond to this statement on Twitter, writing, "Yes, he absolutely did touch me. I put my trust into him as a friend and he violated me." So I guess, sorry for taking so long to read all of that, except that I felt obligated to just get through the whole thing because Lagana did very specifically ask that the statement be read in full or be shown in full on all of these sites. So I wouldn't want to do a disservice to that by not reading the whole thing. That is where we are. David Lagana is still out as the vice president of the National Wrestling Alliance. We are still in a situation where the National Wrestling Alliance is on a hiatus. And I don't have any more news than that. I don't know of anybody that has any more news than that. But we wanted to do our part, given that we are trying to be ambassadors for the National Wrestling Alliance, to just show what's occurred so far in this story. Guys, I'll throw it to you. You heard the statements there and everything. I know it's an uncomfortable topic that we're dealing with, and it should be. This is meant to be an uncomfortable topic. Did you have anything you wanted to say here or add to this about the situation or what's going on, or statement you wanted to make?
No, I mean, it's obviously a horrible situation. One of many horrible things that has come out over the past week. And I mean, we come on here and we're on a public platform and we are live on the internet, and it doesn't do any good in my mind to speculate guilt or innocence. He said, she said, who's right, who's wrong. Because that's the conversation going on. There's tons of people on Twitter leaning both ways, and they're very vocal about it. To me, this just isn't a platform for that. And so I will say it's unfortunate. I hope either way, whatever the truth is, that it comes out, and that I side with J. Cal. If you saw his show earlier today, I'm for justice. Whatever the truth is, whatever justice is, that's what I'm for as well. So I echo that sentiment. It's really unfortunate, no matter which way it goes. It's just a horrible, unfortunate situation. But I mean, she said what she said on Twitter. He put out his statement. She responded to that. I don't know if it's going to keep going back and forth or what happens next. But, personally, as an NWA fan, it sucks. The situation sucks. And I am hopeful for the future. But, we can't not address what's going on. And so my take on it is it just sucks. And, I hope the truth wins ultimately. And that's really all I'm going to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, nothing more to add. I think J. Cal summed it up perfectly today. People need to respect each other, and I want justice to be done. So that's it.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to have much to say about it. I mean, like I said before, we don't have all of the details, obviously, and these things are going to have to play themselves out. That's all we can really expect to happen. I mean, it's been a rough time in the wrestling world this week, and I think that if you think that if you're a person, I've seen people just thinking like this whole thing's crazy, but I definitely don't think that. The wrestling business, I mean, this is not like something that was just unknown. I mean, I think these stories, like all of these stories, I don't expect that everybody knew that, but the wrestling business is known to be, it has its skeezy moments, basically. And so that's part of the history of wrestling. So it's tough. You've seen some stories come out. Just some folks have, I think one of them I saw has like 17 at last count stories that came out about him. And we're not going to list off names or anything like that, but at this time, it's just like the best way to do it, we feel like, is to lay out and let this thing play out. And we'll, of course, speak on anything directly related to the National Wrestling Alliance and the NWA. But other than that, I don't expect us to go off on long tangents discussing details of everything that's happened.
Right.
All right.
Thing I'd add, Gary, is
go ahead, Rob.
Remember that the NWA and there's no taking anything away from what David Lagana has done for the company and the brand and the re-elevation of it into national prominence. But the NWA is bigger than one person. One of the people that we really love who carries a lot of the weight in the company is NWA Marine. And she does a lot of work backstage. Josephus does a lot of stuff. Nick Aldis commented on this the other day. The NWA is going to be okay, guys. This is still one of the it's been a tough week, no doubt, but this is still one of the most vibrant times in the history of wrestling. We're still living in good times, and we're in a bit of an ebb right now. And when things like this get addressed, it's time for us to confront problems and start to examine ourselves. And I think a lot of workers in wrestling have the same mentality that we've got to start examining ourselves and what's acceptable. And I don't want to get into so much about what Marty Scurll said, but Marty Scurll, I think, for to his credit, he said, look, whatever happened, I had a role in making professional wrestling uncomfortable for somebody, and that's not right. Wrestling should not be uncomfortable for people. So, wrestling is good. Wrestling is healthy. The NWA is healthy. We're going to survive this. We've survived FBI racketeering investigations. We're going to get through this. Nick Aldis has still got about 600, 700, 800 more days in the title reign before he drops it. And then, of course, he'll pick it up again for a third reign. But we're on sound footing, guys. It's going to be okay. We're here to serve up gravy cake, be happy and positive, and celebrate, as Gary says, the past, present, and future of the greatest wrestling entity in the history of the world. That's what we're here to do, and we're going to keep doing it.
Yeah, so top that, Will.
Oh, I'm not even going to try. It's the power of positivity right there.
Yeah. No, I think we said this on the live chat last time as well. Yeah, the NWA is made up of too many amazing people. This can't be the end. Now, one of the things that we're going to do as ambassadors is keep doing these shows just like this, these live shows, putting out content related to the National Wrestling Alliance and wrestling in general, and keep the spirit up, the flame a burning for the NWA, just in case anybody out there is having any doubts about the hashtag NWA fan being strong. And that goes all the way to the top, the very tip top, to Mr. William Patrick Corgan, our president. If he ever had any doubts about what he's built working and the fan base that supports it, we want to make sure he knows that we're here and we're ready for the NWA whenever it comes back. In the meantime, there is plenty to discuss. And so I guess with that, we'll move on from the heaviest stuff of the evening. God, I hope. So that brings us into what else have you guys seen this week? Anything you want to discuss before we get into our main event topic? Any wrestling news you found interesting?
Yeah, it caught me off guard, and maybe you guys knew this. I've not been reading my Wrestling Observer and all that stuff this week, but it caught me off guard that Crimson and Jax Dane made a return to Impact.
Yes.
J. Cal brought that up today.
I learned about that
guys.
from J.
If you're
Cal
not
today.
watching J. Cal, you're not watching. You got to watch J. Cal's show, man.
I will not knock J. Cal, by the way, who is an amazing ambassador also for the NWA, and the Alliance blog is fantastic. But I'll tell you where I learned about it. If you guys follow at the NWA Pod on Twitter, whoever's posting of it there definitely talked about this the night it happened and posted a clip. So you guys can go back and check that out. I'll direct these guys to that site also.
I have to give that I'll give that a follow.
Yeah, but there's a lot going on, man. They got The Last Dance going on Netflix, The Last Ride, the Undertaker special. I haven't been watching. What'd you say the name of the podcast was? At the what?
It's at the NWA Pod. You should check it out. It's fantastic.
I'm telling you, man, after I went back and I did see that after, I don't know how I glossed over that, Gary. I did go back and look on our own podcast and our own site and see that you had posted that, but it really just escaped me until J. Cal mentioned it today. I'm like, what? Yeah. But anyway, that to me, that was big news.
I'll be completely honest. As a form of self-care, I have not been on Twitter a lot in the last week. And obviously, you guys can understand why. So that's why I probably missed that. But yeah, I heard about it as well on J. Cal's show today. If you're not, as Gary said, if you're not watching J. Cal's pre-party over on Alliance Wrestling, definitely catch that every Tuesday. But yeah, I learned a lot from that being one of the things. So what do you guys think about? So I've heard that a lot of people, I talked about Deonna Purrazzo a couple of weeks back. I know that she at the time was on a kind of one-off contract deal. She wasn't under, full-time contract. It was just kind of per appearance. And so I'm assuming that's probably what Jax Dane and Crimson were appearing under. So we don't know for sure, but I mean, what was you guys' thoughts when you heard that?
I was shocked. I mean, I guess I'm happy to see him getting some success and getting an opportunity to work. It was the same night as Ricky Starks debuted on AEW. So that's why it stands out in my mind, because I remember just watching television and getting DMs or texts from people about these things. And I got a text from a buddy who was like, your boy Starks is on AEW. And I'm like, what? So I turned on AEW. I wasn't actually even watching it at the time. And then somehow I was posting about it on social media and saw on Impact it pop up that Crimson and Jax Dane were showing up on Impact. And I remember just being tweeting out, just what is happening right now? Why is this happening? And, yeah, man, I mean, I can't do anything but be happy for the guys, if they get a chance to work and make some money. I mean, what else can you do?
Yeah. I mean, I
want them in the NWA, obviously.
I didn't know that Crimson was I knew that he'd had some health issues. So, it kind of surprised me because I didn't know if he was, I just assumed, obviously we're not doing empty arena shows or anything like that in the NWA, but I just assumed, even based off of the What's Calling All This episode, that he was kind of still on hiatus just from recouping from an injury. So that caught me off guard. It doesn't surprise me them showing up at Impact. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think regardless of what Billy's relationship and the uncomfortable nature that might be for him, I view Impact and Ring of Honor as very close cousins. So good for them. I'm a big fan of both of those guys, and to the extent they can ply their trade and demonstrate their ability that we know, I'm all for it.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, Ricky Starks is obviously a different story because he ended up signing a contract that night. Tony Khan actually tweeted out that when he wrestled that match against Cody last Wednesday, it was a one-off appearance, but after seeing that match, he signed him. That's what Tony Khan tweeted out. So that's a little different. There's definitely a contract there. Happy for Ricky, but I'm equally happy for Jack Stain and Crimson because there's only a handful of wrestling companies operating right now. I mean, AEW and WWE, obviously with their TV contracts, Impact started back up, and then I know Championship Wrestling from Hollywood's starting back up, which is great for Marquez and those guys. But other than that, I mean, everybody's kind of on pause when it comes to live wrestling and stuff like that. So the fact that they were able to, even if it is a one-off appearance, to get in there and get some ring time and get some TV time and put their names out there, that's a positive, And I mean, I don't know if that means that they're looking to end up there with a contract or not, but with all we know right now, I mean, that's great for them. I'm sure that they've been sitting at home like the rest of us, kind of itching to get back to work and do what they love. And so I'm glad they got a chance to do that. And I'm glad that they were put on a stage like that with all the talent that's out there right now that's available, that they were able to get a spot on that show says a lot. It's a testament to their talent and their ability.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. We want to acknowledge everybody in the chat again. Thank you so much for joining us right now. Again, if you haven't done it, hit that subscribe button and like the video. Helps get us in front of more people. Speaking of the chat, I just wanted to point out we got Ryan Romano in there since the last time we talked. Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast is in the building. The insiders are here from the Wrestling Days community. And of course, J-Cal, who we've been talking about. See, we didn't even know he was in there until right now, and we've been kidding his butt this whole time. So how about that? I'll just throw to you guys in the chat room what you're saying about some things we've been talking about. Sorry if I missed it up until now. WWE Front Row, one of our favorite people in the world. We don't really know what happened, of course, only knowing what's been posted officially, but I believe the NWA will pivot and continue to blossom. Only time will tell if Mr. Lagana returns. That is 100% correct. Dave Wills is in the chat. Look at that. It's still real to me, Dave. Good to see you, buddy. Alliance Wrestling with Gravy Cake. Love seeing that. Hashtag Gravy Cake, everybody. Let's see here. What else? Wrestling with the MMA says hashtag Strictly Resistance will be taking Sweet Charlotte from Aldous Stinson. So I feel like you got to have a representative. Like who's gonna be your guy?
Don't get him stirred up that quick, that early in the show. Let's give him.
I'm not taking the bait. I'm not taking the bait wrestling with the MMA. We've done hashed this out. It's
all right.
It's not even debatable.
Yeah, Dave Wills in the chat saying the darkest hour can be before the dawn. It may be better than we ever saw it before. That's damn right, Dave. You tell him.
Beautiful.
Dave knows what's up. He's got that history. He knows what NWA's been through. Dr. Red Tyler in the house. I don't trust that guy, but he's here. Let's see here. Who else? Brian Lang says, if it ain't on TikTok, I don't hear about it.
Stop.
That's right.
So
that's right. Yeah, I absolutely right. And that's why I miss a lot of stuff because I'm not on the TikToks. But you know where I am at? I'm on MySpace. You can just find me under the profile name of Tom, and we can talk on MySpace. So. Nailed it.
Yeah, you are nailing it. I believe it. Nailing the bottle tonight. That's what you're doing. Let's see. Front Row did say, did Thunder Rosa offer Piper a contract yet? She does great interviews.
It's coming. Yeah, we're in talks with Thunder Rosa. We're actually working on a project together, Thunder Rosa and I. She asked me for my help. I don't know why, but I'm very humbled. And we're doing a project on the history of the women's championship. So that's something that I've been collecting photos and articles, and I've got an extensive collection of vintage wrestling magazines that I've shared some pictures with Gary and Will in our private discourses and stuff like that. But so that's kind of a long-term project. But we love Thunder Rosa. Thunder Rosa is a big fan of ours, and we're big fans of hers. And you never know when she might turn up on this channel. So.
Yeah, absolutely. She surprised us this past Sunday, just out of nowhere. Just Thunder Rosa popped in, and then there is no. That's when you know you've made it. That's when you know it's real. Thunder Rosa, the women's champion, just decided on a whim, hey, I want on because I got to talk about some stuff, and she came on. And by the way, if you didn't see it, you got to go back and check that out. And we talked about clipping out her section, and we may still do that. She's her whole segment in that show is absolutely must see. You've got to hear Thunder Rosa talk, especially in light of everything going on in the world right now. It's just good to hear that positive voice. And actually, it's worth mentioning, since we're talking about news items, she talks a lot about it, but it was announced also this week that Thunder Rosa is launching Mission Pro Wrestling, and it is an all-female wrestling company. And by all female, not like just in the ring as well, behind the scenes, everywhere, from the camera operator to the booker to the general manager to all of it. It is all females. So that's going to be an interesting project, and you'll see a lot of support of that from us because we love our champ. And of course we get to talk to her a little bit about what that means, what reservations she has. Has there been any discussions about the NWA women's title being defended in that company? So that's all stuff to check out if you haven't done so already. Let's talk about Undertaker for a quick second. Well, you brought that up. I watched the clips. I actually didn't watch the whole documentary, but I did go back and watch the clips because I did see the big announcement. So spoiler alert, if you haven't already seen it, the Undertaker did officially announce he's retiring from the ring. It was a little weird. As I recall it, it was kind of this story. The one part that made it legitimate to me is that he did, in the stuff I saw, talk about how his brother passed away, I think, while they were filming the AJ Styles match from WrestleMania. And then also his brother-in-law got very sick. It was something like that, I think. And it made him take a step back and realize that life is short, and he's got a young son, and you could check out tomorrow. You don't know. So he's wanting to spend more time with family and that sort of thing. But I thought, he mentioned a little bit about the WrestleMania match, and then also he had been disappointed. He had that brush with the Goldberg match in Saudi Arabia where he basically got dropped on his head and probably thought that he had broken his neck for a minute and that sort of thing. So time's short, but even all of that at WrestleMania, it was a very cinematic match. He did describe that it was a very grueling shoot, that it still felt like a very long match because you're constantly throwing yourself off of things over and over again, and it lasts till like 5 o'clock in the morning. But I guess with that, I'll throw to you guys. Do you buy it? Is that the last time we're going to see the Undertaker wrestle?
No.
Very, very quick to it. Will says no.
No. Well, he said, and I think Rob brought this up when the three of us were talking about it offline. I mean, he did add the caveat in there, unless Vince really needs me. Let's be honest, Vince is always going to really need him. I mean, every time WrestleMania season gets close and they're looking at the card or there's injuries or something like that, Vince is going to get into that panic mode, and, you're going to want the lights to cut out and to hear that gong. And, I don't think it may be cinematic or it may be in the ring. I don't know. And I mean, also the fact that, that cinematic match with AJ Styles, it was really great. I will say that it was awesome to watch. It was a great way to, cover up the shortcomings just due to his age and things like that, that, we see in the ring and stuff. But I at the end of the day, I think when he sits back and thinks about it, he's going to want to end his career in the ring in front of fans, and to get that send off that not only he deserves, but he probably wants. He probably wants at least one more moment in the ring with an arena or a stadium at WrestleMania or something like that. So, I think what he said was valid in the moment, just because the situation that we're in, and probably how he feels right now, just because of life and everything like that. But I think when the time rolls around in the next couple of years, we'll see him in the ring again in front of a crowd, and that might be it, or it might not. Who knows? But I don't think we've seen the last of Undertaker.
Man, I've got a million thoughts. I'm not going to say them all, but I'm going to try to be organized about this, because I just really respect the world out of the Undertaker. I think the last point that Will made is very good. I think it would be appropriate for Taker to end his career in front of a crowd, and he talks about how hard it is to walk away, and how he gets that itch, and how it just burned at him that he wasn't working the WrestleMania that one year. And it's just the other part of me is like, this could be it though, because I think the Undertaker, being a statesman, he's one of those ones where I don't care who you are, wherever you are. Undertaker has got to be on everybody. He's on somebody's Mount Rushmore, and very rightfully so, of greatest of all time. He was so humble, but he's also so responsible with the business and what his body can take. He's responsible to his family, his kids, his daughter, and his wife, Michelle McCool. So I don't think that he wants to do anything, and he's so cognizant of his legacy, and wrestlers along those lines are very, very critical of their own ring work. And I don't think that he wants to put anything out there as a testament to his career that can't live up to the legacy that the Undertaker is. And so I'm not going to say, I'm not 100% sure that we've not seen the last of the Undertaker. Of course, if Vince needs him, he'll be there. But at the same time, I think Vince loves the Undertaker. They have a relationship, and I don't think Vince, is eager to put the Taker in a position that's going to be compromising to him or his legacy. I just have to say that, one, as an NWA fan primarily, let's not forget that Mean Mark Mark Calloway is an NWA guy. He started out, in various promotions before he landed in WWF, and one of those was NWA when he was half of the Skyscrapers for a while, and he was imposing then, and then he took that and parlayed that career to something that's just unmatched and unparalleled. And I think that he's one of those ones who's like universally respected. It's just like, I can't, there's nothing in the world like the respect of your peers, and he has it. And for me, and we've talked about this before, the older I get, being a military guy, I've never been a sensitive person, and that's not anything to brag about or anything. It's just I haven't. That's not what was in my makeup. And the older I get, especially when Petra came along, I've gotten a lot more sensitive as a person, and much more introspective and self-reflective and self-critical and all that. It really was very moving to me. It's very moving to me to see the Undertaker, the dead man, the great American badass. It's very moving to me to see him get choked up and to be self-critical too, because I don't know, I guess like those of us who have prided ourselves on being strong and putting out a tough exterior, it's neat to see someone like that who we respect and venerate just be vulnerable, And so if you haven't seen it, again, I think Work Shoot Wrestling pointed out that 1, 2, and 5 were the best episodes, and I have to agree with them. They are. 3 and 4 are hard to watch. They're tough to watch, but it is a great series, and I don't want to spoil anything, but this is one that I like Will. I had to detach from Twitter some this week. We've got some other projects walking on, but I wanted to give this a fair watch. And we're actually, my wife, who's really into the Undertaker too, she's not been able to see it all, so I'm going to go back and watch it a second time and try to pick us on some things. But I cannot. This is some serious journalism right here. And again, if you're Undertaker, you're probably not watching, but if you are, hats off to you, man. You deserve the best send off that anybody can get. And this is if that's your last match, there's no tarnish about your career. You're one of the greats, man.
I have no doubt Undertaker's watching right now. He's one of the people in the chat. He's a second name in there. Probably James Lawrence. I see James Lawrence in there. Shout out to him. Secretly the Undertaker, for those of you who don't know.
Definitely.
Seeing some stuff about the Saudi money though, that's always a game changer. I don't know though. I think he's probably feeling pretty good about that part of it. I hope.
Man, I think everybody feels good about Saudi money.
Let me bring this up. Just, speaking of James Lawrence, he said make him a booker. I mean, is there another capacity besides being in the ring that you guys could ever see the Undertaker in, or is his aura and mystique, he can only be that in-ring talent? I mean, is there any other iteration of the Undertaker that could be present in WWE?
He's one of those ones that I think is going to be essential to the WWE forever. Like I see him in an ambassador role. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, before fans got smart to it and before the internet killed kayfabe and all that, maybe not, because he has to be the dead man, But now that and the Undertaker had a hand in this production himself, and he showed he let the world into his life in a way that he's never done before. And I just see, to me, it's like when I think of like the essential, you can go back, and the WWE's got a storied legacy too, with guys like Buddy Rogers and Bruno and Pedro Morales and Bob Backlund. But at least from the 89 to 90 on, the Undertaker is one of the greats, and he's probably one of the greatest of all time. And I can't see a world in which the Undertaker's not play some sort of role in the brand, whether as an ambassador or whether back there doing shot calling and booking or whatever. But yes, I believe he's always going to be present. The Undertaker isn't going away.
Well, that's what
I can see him.
I just wonder about what that would look like. I mean, obviously, could you imagine Undertaker on commentary? Just like in his.
I was actually going to say that. Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, the thing with it is like when you were asking at first, I was like, of course, any role. But I would say any role that's not on screen. I can't picture the Undertaker.
And maybe, and that's probably what I was asking. Is there any on-screen role where he's not choke slamming people in the ring that, we're getting that 20-minute long entrance that you could see? Personally, I couldn't. I feel like, I don't know. I think if he's going to be on screen, he's got to be the Undertaker, and he's got to be a wrestler, and so.
It's weird. It's weird because it's, he could surprise us and show up for commentary, but I don't know why I'd want to. I mean, the guy's done everything you can do, and I can't imagine that he needs a paycheck that bad or anything. But if you want to talk about like with, there's a writer's room, so I doubt he ends up in a booking scenario. But as an agent or something like that, a guy who throws together matches, coaches, other wrestlers, there's probably he's on par arguably with anybody else in the business as far as something like that would go. So he'd be invaluable in that kind of role. But yeah, man, I can't see him like.
Did it impress you guys watching that? How like humble he was, like how he would solicit input from what I mean, and this is no shade on anybody, but lesser talents, lesser names. I mean, we're talking about the Undertaker here, and he's in there, asking people if things were okay and all that, and you can see like he appreciated everybody. He kind of jokes about him being the Godfather and people coming up to him to pay tribute, but then he's like very sensitive to that, and he's very keen on like. He's just such a humble guy, man. I mean, like this is a good man. The dead man is a good man, and did that strike you guys at all when you saw that?
Yeah, a little bit, but I mean, I mean, probably not as much as it did for you. I mean, Undertaker's so mysterious, but I never assumed that he was a jerk. I figured being around that long, he's probably got a good attitude backstage and gets along well with everyone. So that, it kind of checked out for me.
Yeah, and it wasn't that I don't think that he doesn't get along. I think like what really impressed me, I guess, or what really hit me, like when I see something, I'm like, gosh, man, look at this. It's that scene where Taker's kneeling down and Hunter comes up to like coach him, to like, I'm like, this is the Undertaker. The Undertaker don't need no coaching. This is the dead man, but he talks about that and he how much he appreciated it and how it empowered him and everything. And you can see like it's neat because I'm with you, Will. Like he's always been shrouded in mystery, and it was really just kind of surreal to me to see that veil torn back. And again, I'm not a WWF guy. I'm not. I mean, I like to stay informed, and I want to know what's going on, like you guys do. But I've always respected the Undertaker. He's my favorite WWE personality. He's my favorite, bar none, of all time, next to Flair. Flair's an NWA guy, but next to him, it's Taker. So for me, it was just like to see people coming up like Kurt Angle, giving him the kiss on the forehead, and the Triple H conversation, and you got Christian coming up to him, and those guys like just encouraging him, and he like he needed that. It really, really, it was weighty, it was heavy for me to watch.
You kind of get that impression too when like Ricky Starks would post those videos back in the day. I remember where he got to have a sit down with Undertaker and stuff, and that was the first time I recall ever seeing Undertaker like that. Like if you go back in some of Ricky Starks' old posts, he was definitely, just very approachable. It seemed like I would have never guessed that. I met Undertaker and he was very frightening. And so it was just a different version of him than I recalled. But,
I was telling Tanya about that story last night, Gary.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He got beat up by Undertaker.
Yeah. He was going to beat me. So, different strokes, I guess. Let's see what else happened in the news this week, folks, that we can talk about. What's the chat going on? Again, hit subscribe if you haven't so far. Alliance Blog says seeing Taker on commentary is that much different than seeing Stu Bennett on commentary. I'm not 100% sure what you're going for there, J Cal, but like Stu Bennett I think Stu Bennett's pretty fantastic on commentary. Like I was pretty impressed with him. He just, and he's got that voice that it feels like it's got some gravitas to it. What he calls it, it sounds clean and professional, and just like it adds I know it's probably like the stereotype for a British voice, but like just the elegance that it brings to it, just hearing Stu Bennett. The one thing I do enjoy about a wrestler being on commentary, though, is a guy like Stu Bennett. When he's speaking, you're getting it from the perspective of somebody who's actually been in there. And so I do kind of dig that aspect of it. But yeah, I don't know personally. I don't know if you guys had any thoughts on that. I'm just gonna do this so you guys. I was not quick enough. I was trying to move it to gallery view so everybody could see both of you. Look,
I like Stu. I don't know. I can't add anything to what you just said. I like him. I like Joe Galley. So but I also know that Jay Cal has got a better sense of things than I do. So if he's got issue with that, I'm probably going to just defer to him. It's like, I'm wrong and he's right.
Why don't you do that with me?
I do. Every day when we're off a line and we just talking, the three of us, I'm always giving in to y'all, man. Y'all beat up on me. You guys in YouTube, MySpaces, Napster, LiveJournal, listen to me. I get bullied more than anybody in the pro wrestling podcast community by these two busters right here. I love them. If I didn't love them so much, I wouldn't like them.
Well said.
Shout out to Crypto Zoom Mauler, who's in the chat. I'm looking here. I'm seeing Al Johns, Chris Johnson. It's good to see you guys. Thanks for coming out and hanging out with us today. Mike Digital, it's good to see you, buddy. Have you talked about Thunder Rosa's new wrestling fed? Yes, we did. We just talked about it. It was Mission Pro Wrestling. We were happy to talk about it anytime. Big fans of Thunder Rosa over here. Front Row brought up a topic in the chat earlier that should be one that we should have mentioned earlier on, or shouldn't mention for later on. I'm sorry. That, you know, when we do these polls, he mentioned women's wrestlers, like talking about women's wrestlers and then potential women's wrestlers that could show up in Mission Pro, like who we'd like to see in Mission Pro Wrestling. Because I could name some, I mean, right off. I mean, hopefully her connections in NWA get her folks like, I mean, if you want to start a Fed, you want to get some Allison Kay up in there, some Camille, you want to get some Danny Jordan, you want to Lindsay Snow, all of that stuff. But anyway, I thought that would be an interesting topic. Also in the chat is that Ricky Starks video I was mentioning was from On It. It was Ricky Starks and Aaron Solo, who is Bailey's fiance, were sitting down to chat with Undertaker. And I did not know this, but the chat's also telling me that there's Mark Calloway merchandise on WWE Shop. And I did not know that. So, yeah. Crypto Zoom Mauler in the chat asking if Jazz retired. She had some health issues, but then I feel like she showed up on AEW at one point. She was working at a school in Texas, but I don't think I've heard that like she officially retired or anything like that. Savannah Evans, yes, would also be another good choice. I keep waiting for her to show up on NWA eventually. Someday. Let's see. You know, the other news that got looked over this week, and this is, I said we'd get away from the heavy stuff, but did you guys see that there were like 30 luchadors in Mexico so far since like, was it March, that have died from coronavirus?
No.
That's getting buried like under everything else that goes on. I'm gonna look it up here. I saw something about that earlier. But yeah, I think it was like El Fantasma or something reported it or something like that. But basically just like lots of hospitalizations, but like 30 deaths thus far.
Wow.
From coronavirus and just of luchadors in Mexico. And that's just kind of insane.
That's terrible.
Which makes you wonder like what's going to happen right now with all of that stuff, because, you know, WWE had the outbreak or well, I say outbreak, but they had the positive test or whatever, but I don't know. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. I mean, attached to that too is just talking about WWE. After that happened, you know, Kevin Owens has said that he's not gonna come to the taping, so I guess he's gonna be off TV for a while, off of WWE programming, just making that decision for himself and his family that, you know, if there's a positive case like that, he's just gonna park it at home. So, you know, props to him for making that decision. Hopefully there won't be any backlash, no pun intended, for that. And he can do what he thinks is right.
Well, as an avid watcher of HeyIt'sWill.daily, I know that they tend to often say that there won't be a backlash, but then certainly appears.
They say that. They do say that.
That sounds like some Rob's.
You said
WWE?
Here there's Will.
It's called Monday Night Raw.
Oh, Crypto Zoom Mahler's pointing out that Black Demon 2, who won the Pendragon Cup, was a corona victim. Yeah, I think I'd heard that somewhere. But yeah, thanks for pointing that out. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I was looking here to see if I could find the exact article that I was looking at. I'm pretty positive I saw it on the Observer like yesterday or this morning or something like that. But insane. What other news? Any other news you guys want to talk about in the chat? Have you got anything for us that you want to discuss before we move to the main event topic. Oh, hey, that's a good point. Work Shoot Wrestling talking about he's going to be on the bump tomorrow. That's that WWE thing, right? That I have no idea what it is. I'm not 100% sure, but speaking of WWE, since we're just like all up their butts today, what was that other show they do that got canceled on Fox? Backstage, was that the name of it?
Yeah,
the one CM Punk. Yeah,
yep.
Canceled. 86 WWE Backstage, and that's that. I'm glad I brought that up.
Breaking news. You heard it here. Oh, you probably read
Wrestling it with the MMA. He's asking in the chat, what's the recipe for gravy cake? Rob, do you know? Do you have your own family recipe?
You're not ready for that yet, MMA. You're not ready for that. That's a closely guarded secret among this three. So we're giving it to you for free tonight. So but we can't just hand out recipes of gravy cake. Come on.
You follow us on TikTok.
Follow his tic-tac. Oh, same.
Yeah. Oh, let me say, I did want to say Mike Digital, man. Shout out to Mike Digital. He's been a huge presence in the pro wrestling fan community, NWA fam since the quarantine started and all that. Just providing some good stuff, resources for people. I don't want to go into a lot of details about that, but here on the internet. But he's one of the big heroes, man, and he's putting stuff out every day for us to consume. And just big shout out to Mike Digital, man. Much love.
That's a good point. Yeah, right when the quarantine started, that guy was on top of it, just trying to do his part and provide some entertainment for folks. So yeah, definitely worth mentioning that. We appreciate the hashtag NWA fam. You guys, everybody, just full of inspiration and positivity and just doing what you can everywhere. 99 days ago, says Mike Digital, when that started. Work Shoot Wrestling says
Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast says Backstage not canceled, scaled back only for major shows. I saw some places reporting that, but I saw on the Observer and I think the Torch, they were like, yeah, they said that, but then they also let literally everybody go. And that was just like maybe for major shows we'll do one. But I think Meltzer actually said he talked to a bunch of people from that studio that were like, that's not going to actually happen. But we'll see. We'll see. Just keeping hope alive, I guess. Let's see here. James Lawrence says they're starting to run indie shows in West Virginia. So hopefully we'll get to see live wrestling soon. He's got his anti-COVID mask. It seemed like with Marty and Nick, the collaborations were going to resume between NWA and ROH. Can you confirm if this is the case or was a one-off? I don't know any particular details unless you guys do. I mean, it seemed Marty and Nick are pretty tight. So I felt like they were back in the process of working out a partnership, because it wasn't even just them. Like the bouncers showed up on NWA. The NWA folks were popping up on ROH TV. Nick Aldis was in a match where he teamed up with Roosh and took on PCO and someone. I just forgot who. But so
or somebody.
Yeah, and last week I think, or it may have been 2 weeks ago, but Nick Aldis appeared on one of the newer Ring of Honor YouTube shows that they've started doing during the pandemic called, I think it's called ROH Week by Week, and it's just kind of their version of a weekly show to just keep things going and interviews and stuff like that. And one episode actually started out with a promo from Aldis saying that when wrestling starts back, you're going to be hearing from me. So he was kind of putting Ring of Honor on notice. So yeah, that would lead me to believe the collaboration's definitely still effective, still going on. So wouldn't be surprised to see more of that. when things get back going. Obviously that's up in the air right now, especially now, but hopefully that'll resume when everything gets back to normal.
Yeah, I think too. I think that Nick Aldis is open to taking a title anywhere. If and I think Billy is too. Really, I think William Patrick Corgan is if entities like Ring of Honor or Impact or New Japan or what have you will provide him with that avenue to defend the title, they're open to it. There's always been this sort of kinship between Ring of Honor and Impact, and really to AEW as well. If you look at, I've got my NWA 70 playbill on the wall over there. I'm like, half the names on that AEW poster are now on half of the names on that 70 NWA 70 poster are on the AEW roster now. So there's some kinship there. So yeah, I mean there's and like you were saying, Will, they're certainly Nick has already throw down the gauntlet. I mean, he intends to wreak some havoc in AEW or Ring of Honor and make his presence known there. So.
All right. Obviously, folks, if you haven't already, I'm just going to keep saying it throughout the show. Hit that subscribe button. We love you guys, and we're grateful to have you all here hanging out with us. And share this on social media if you like the conversation. You want to keep talking about wrestling. We love having you guys here, and it gives us something to do. It's really boring if it's just the three of us because we talk too much as it is. So it's nice having other voices. WWE front row. I love how creative people have been during this time, keeping themselves relevant through fresh content. We were seeing a whole lot of that. I mean, the biggest disappointment for me so far with the NWA shutdown is going to end up being the fact that we were seeing some really cool stuff and some real evolution in the programs that Carney Land was putting out, from like What's Causing All This and Inside the NWA. And Rob would deny this until the day he dies, but the Eli Drake show. And I was interested to see where Girl Power went. So outside of even the weird Carney Land show, I'm disappointed that we don't get to see those shows. I wish we could do something about that. Because I really enjoyed the discussions that were happening on those. Which one would you guys miss more, though, do you think? Just curious.
Of the Carney Land shows?
Yeah.
Probably I've really valued the What's Calling All This segments. And probably next to that would be Inside the NWA. Those are the most informative, I think. Now, and don't get me wrong, man. I have mixed feelings about Eli, but there's almost always one reason I'm real frustrated is because there's almost always something in every episode that I really like, and then something that really pisses me off. So it's like, on both ends of the spectrum there. Girl Power was harder to listen to. It's kind of an empowerment piece, and I think that it spoke to an audience that they were great. They were very riveting and cutting edge and that kind of thing. They were good journalism. But it was just very,
but Rob doesn't like to see anybody raised up, really, if possible.
I'm just looking at my green screen, how it's all jacked up right now. I don't know.
It does look like some wild junk is happening.
We got some storms going on here that I think are interfering with things. So I'm going to try
your green screen specifically. What kind of storms?
Yeah,
those green screen storms, man. Let's get you.
Storms messing my green screen up, man.
Right.
It was it felt like I was at the brand new This Is the NWA After Dark club that just was built on the up and coming side of town, and you were like in the abandoned building where it used to
be. Yeah. Now, when I actually took my green screen down, I've got this pegboard behind me, and it's got green spray paint on it just so my boundaries, my green screen is basically poster board. But, you can see all the little, if you're looking and my background's not on, you can see all the little pegboard holes in there. So anyway, but I'm just letting the paint dry on there before I put this green screen back up. So.
A lot of great topics.
Behind the scenes, man. I just pulled the veil back like Undertaker.
God, you and Undertaker.
Now y'all can all rest in peace.
He latches on to somebody every episode.
He does.
Just rolls with it.
And I mean, we skimmed over it, but I mean, were any of us shocked that Rob would mostly miss the Nick Aldis show? What's causing Aldis? I mean, I could have just answered for you, bud.
I'm gonna tell you right now, so far, and we don't know what's going to happen if that's going to continue. I think Mike Digital asked if I don't think the Lightning one direction of NWA is over with by any stretch. You still have a lot of talented people that can take the ball and run with it. But you guys got to admit that Doug Williams, Nick Aldis interview was like wrestling cop university, like tuition level. We should have paid $3,000 to see that, to get that class.
Absolutely.
So it's not me just being a huge fan of Nick Aldis, which I am, but man, his stuff is just so good. He's getting into the wrestling, like ring psychology and promoting and different styles, the British style versus the strong style versus the American style. He's getting those kind of things that guys like us really, really eat up. So, and no, all that content was good. Like I really love the practical stuff that Eli Drake was bringing, the diet stuff, him showing us how he cooks in the morning and here's what you do. And the 30-day challenge, which we're all supposed to be have taken up. So it was good, but and the empowerment pieces were great too. They were. It's just I think that I don't identify with a lot of those things because I've not experienced a lot of the things that the women are expressing right now in the world of wrestling and the things that their perspectives. So, but that has a very relevant audience for people like my daughters and my wife and all that. And I valued it, and I wish that we'd gotten an episode last Friday. But the all this pieces were the best, man. I mean, objectively, they were.
Yeah, that Doug Williams episode and conversation was by far my favorite piece of content put out by the NWA during this quarantine and Carneyland and all that. So I mean, I'm right there with you on that. I'm just giving you hell about it, but yeah. And so here's a question, and maybe I don't know if this is too painful to talk about now that Carneyland may be over. But, there was a handful of people that didn't get their own show or their own spotlight through Carneyland. And, I mean, what would you guys have wanted to see? And you guys in the chat, too. I mean, Rob, I'm sure you'll agree with me on this, too, but I would love to seen Josephus have his own show in some capacity and be able to kind of flex his creative muscles in a full scale show the same way that Aldis and Eli and some of those guys did.
Josephus he's actually my favorite NWA star, more so than even Nick Aldis. I respect what Nick Aldis means for the history of the company and the longevity of the title reign. And he is the perfect world champion right now, but Josephus is my favorite. I like his creativity. I like the fact that he is behind the scenes. He is a true academic and intellect. This is a guy who has been a media specialist at a library at a university. He teaches music courses at the university level. He studies philosophy, theology. He's been a seminary student. We are actually, the three of us are going to talk with Josephus, but it's not going to be on the air because Josephus he's not comfortable with doing podcasts. There's only a handful out there. And the ones that are out there are like amazing to listen to. They're amazing. You learn so much. So I would love to have seen stuff like that. Absolutely. I mean, but I don't think Josephus felt put out, to kind of get back to your question. I don't felt like he felt like he was missing out because I don't think that's where his comfort zone is. I've actually been on shows with Josephus before here in the American Wrestling Federation here in North Georgia. And Josephus comes, he's very polite, very kind, very tender, but he also has a very strong sense of maintaining the integrity of wrestling, the integrity of kayfabe. He's one of those guys that really believes in that. And he thinks that's part and parcel of being someone who's given their life to the sport. He studies it. He's a true student. He reads books and literature. He studied the personality of Bruiser Brody. He actually portrayed Bruiser Brody in The Dark Side of the Ring. He was the guy that portrayed him because they have this uncanny resemblance. He's one of those ones that when you look at the things that he does do, man, we don't always get it. And that's not to Josephus's discredit. That's to our discredit because almost everything he does is rooted in some deep philosophical proposition or some deep I mean, I think Gary gets a lot of things that I don't get because he and Gary share sort of a cult film fetish. I guess I'm not to use that word flippantly or anything, but they're into
Sure.
cult films.
Yeah,
Go
ahead.
That's our other podcast. That's not this one.
Psychotronic Film Society. It's great, and we in our family like film, but not to the degree that they do. I mean, these guys know everything about film, and they study it at a university level degree of intensity. So I would really love to see Josephus stuff. I can't wait till we hang out and you guys seen that he's communicated with us about that and is more than willing to do that at some point. But I don't think we're going to see him in a segment. That's just not where he's at. That's not what he does. I mean, he's kind of like Undertaker before the last ride. I mean, he's all about the mystery, and he's about he's quirky like that. That's where he's at. So, and I respect it.
Who's somebody I haven't seen much of that I really wish, like Carneyland opens us up to, but I've somehow expected to see more, because like with Camille and Thunder Rosa, we've gotten some good stuff that they're just doing off on their own YouTube channels. But Allison Kay seems to have a lot of talent to me. And she's just got a lot of personality that, like, I'm trying to be careful how I say this so it doesn't sound like disparaging or something, but there's sides of her personality, I guess is what I'm looking for, that you don't see in NWA all the time, or so far on NWA Power. In NWA Power, she's got a very serious demeanor and no nonsense approach to wrestling, and just kind of a badass look. Whereas with Carneyland, we've seen stuff like her Carneyland College segments where she's like teaching promo class, or Esther Addington character coming out. I mean, I assume that they have some connection. No word on that is true. But if you check out Allison Kay's Instagram right now, the most recent picture is of Esther Addington in a bikini, and just gonna leave that there. But anyway, so you I'd like to see more out of Allison Kay, like as far as some kind of creativity, like just segments and that sort of thing. Obviously I miss them all in the ring, but I feel like Allison Kay could carry a show.
I think so. I think there's like a depth that we've seen from her through Carneyland that we didn't know was there, but just that she hasn't been able to use in wrestling. And so that was cool to see. And yeah, I would have loved to see, her get her own show and, see what kind of stuff she could come up with. I mean, she was really involved in Girl Power, but that was more of a podcast feel to it, more like what we're doing here. And it would have been interesting to see, because I think it's fairly obvious from seeing her that she's got some different characters and some different talents and things that when it comes to either acting or something like that I think would have been really cool for her to get to explore through all this. So I'm with you there.
She approaches the business with such respect, and she's one of those ones who when she speaks, her words carry a lot of weight and authority just because who she is. She doesn't get enough due because she's so willing to put others over, and she's about elevating the brand and the sport, and so she's perfectly fine to push a Camille and a Thunder Rosa, who are both women who are both very deserving. We love Thunder Rosa so much, but Allison Kay is like, I don't feel like she's gotten her just due yet. I also don't think that she's done being a world champion either. I think she's got reins left in her, and she, I think, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, but she had an instrumental hand in the designing of the Burke title. She has a personal affinity for Mildred Burke and that legacy, and she has a sense of history and of the weight that her legacy carries. And so you've actually done a really remarkable podcast with her. It's one of my favorite, right up there with the Marty Bell one. So yeah, man, Allison Kay she's up there. She's on that Mount Rushmore of the rebrand of the NWA, along with Josephus and Tim Storm and Nick Aldis.
Would be fun to see. I mean, the one thing that I've really come to appreciate about her, and I didn't know her so well until the NWA, but looking back, I mean, she is a journeyman wrestler. Like, she has been all over the place. Journeywoman, I guess you'd say. But I don't think a lot of people realize like how much experience Allison Kay has through like her Impact days, and she's been a champion there, and like even she's been in the Mae Young Classic in WWE and that sort of thing, and it's tough, like gone through some life-threatening conditions and fought back from to get back into the ring. So yeah, definitely worth mentioning. Seeing in the chat also Marty Bell getting a lot of love. So she's worth mentioning also. Marty Bell definitely has a lot of personality. Marty Bell's got a career all over the wrestling business, I feel like. Like she seems like she's absolutely ready to become a presenter of some sort. She could probably work on commentary. Like she seems like, I mean, and that's not taken away from Allison on that part either, but like Marty has that like, I don't know, some kind of excitement behind her, like a passion whenever she talks. It's just, it's kind of fun watching her. Like she seems like one of those people that could just like, you could plug her in anywhere in a wrestling company and she would excel.
Man, that the shoot interview you did with her got so much positive buzz and everything. And it was so good. I was actually, we talked about me sleeping in 3 hour spurts. I was actually up like 2 a.m. in the morning doing some work around the house, and I was listening to that podcast, and I listened to it again the next day. I like to listen to things 2 or 3 listens, but Marty Bell, man, is so good. She's so good, and the sky's the limit for her too. And I was really intrigued. I like seeing her in Tim Storm's classroom, obviously, but I love seeing her like on the phone conversation with Allison Kay, because they've got that friendship and history too.
I'm going to skip right past you talking about her in the classroom. I know what you were going for there, Rob. Dawson's get. No, who knows? The Dawsons are getting mentioned in there. That's funny. Also, earlier on in the chat, one name we forgot that got brought up a couple of times I saw was Eddie Kingston. I don't even know if I could stand Eddie Kingston for like 30 minutes at a time, like, because he's so intense. Like, I feel like after like 15 minutes, I would be like crying or angry or something. I don't know. Like, Eddie Kingston's like, man, he gets you fired up with every single promo. I totally agree that he could probably do anything he wants to do. The guy is as good on the mic as anybody. But geez, man, I don't know. I can't picture like what that show would be like.
Yeah, I mean, Eddie Kingston's whole thing, and, you know, he cut a couple of promos for the Carney Land intros, and he and Homicide were on Inside the NWA. But he's just Eddie Kingston. I don't think he's ever going to be a character. And so, I mean, if he had his own, you know, hour-long show, it would just be an hour-long Eddie Kingston promo. And I'm right there with you, Gary. I'd be like, by the end of it, I'd be punching a wall or something. I'd just be so fired up and so, like, you know, ready to go. I'd probably go, you know, sign up for some martial arts classes or something and start getting, you know, or trying to get in like a back alley brawl or something. So, you know, I think he was used in a good capacity throughout all this. I'm glad that they found places to use him where he would fit in, and cutting those promos I thought that was excellent. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't know. I don't know if I could do an hour long, you know, Eddie Kingston promo. Might be a little too much for me.
That's a good point, man. I think I agree. I think I'd be an emotional wreck after listening to Eddie for an hour. And I love to listen to him. That's just the thing, you know. It's like what Will's saying. If you listen to him and you want to go, you know, hey, Tanya, I've got a new goal. We're going to climb Everest here in 2 weeks. We're going to run the Chattanooga Triathlon, Ironman. And he's so inspiring, and it's because he's authentic. He's not a character. The best personalities are not characters. That's what the NWA does so well. These are authentic people. Authenticity has been one of the buzzwords that we've mentioned quite a bit in our show, in our podcast. And you know, and he, more than anybody, represents that. You know, his voice. You just feel the emotion. You feel those years of growing up under hard conditions and the things that he's seen. I love when he was talking about how, because I identified with it as well. I tell people all the time, you know, if you listen to Piper's Notes, you hear one of our missions is to show that wrestling is a high form of culture. You know, it's not trashy entertainment or anything like that. It's very high form, which Marty Bell talks about. She studies dance, and she feels like this is the culmination of all these different forms of art, which I fully agree with. But Eddie Kingston talks about how he would have to come inside to watch ECW, and that kept him off the streets. Like, wrestling saved his life. And I'm like, you know, my brother and I, we had a happy childhood, but it wasn't because our parents were around. They weren't around, and they weren't ever mean to us. But my parents had very dark demons in their lives, and for that they were absentee. But my brother and I had to be in at 6:05 to watch wrestling and the Braves after that. And so in a very real sense, in the same way that it did for Eddie, wrestling saved us, you know.
All right. Well, we're getting ready to get into our main event topic, I think. Just real quick, did I tell you guys, by the way, just so I like throwing this out every once in a while, that we are sponsored by manscaped.com using the code NWA Pod. Gets you 20% off and free shipping. So if you're watching this right now, Rob was talking about trashy things. So one really trashy thing is you not keeping yourself cleaned up. Look at Rob's chest right now. It's not a spot of hair like in the center. He grooms. That's a well-groomed man. And you do that with Manscaped. They've got a ceramic blade that stops any nicks, cuts. It's the ultimate tool for your family jewels. I was on the Jay-Z Flair show this past week, and that was a lot of fun, by the way. But Paulie B on there said it best. He's like, "When's the last time you went and ordered a hot dog and they served it to you with fur?" So,
man, hold on now.
What does that have to do? What does that have to do with Manscaped?
I'm going to let you figure that out.
Man, if y'all don't listen to that, again, I mentioned earlier how these guys just pick on me constantly, man. He gets on this podcast and tells everybody that my AWA title is ghetto. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? The inmate belt was ghetto. It's
Paulie, I was about to say, yeah, see, I guess I don't know the story behind the inmate belt. And I knew you had some name for it or whatever, but Paulie's looked like, I don't know, it looked different, a little different than yours. He had it on display. He had that in the TV title in his background there. So we were just having that discussion. So
I'm sitting there.
I was not knocking you, Rob.
Man, I'm driving down I-75, heading into Chattanooga, man, just trying to go get me some Chick-fil-A. And I hear you say that, and I literally spit my drink out when you said that. I was like, no, he did not. Just throw shade on my beautiful inmate belt. Nah, it was funny, man. That was y'all have to listen. That if you don't listen to Jay-Z Flair, man, that is the funniest podcast. It's so good.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun, and they keep it positive, and it's lighthearted, man. And that guy, Jay-Z was like at one point, like, I might get you, like you're all anybody could hope for at a co-host. I was like, I watched what they did on that thing, and Paulie B, I was like, dude, you got your co-host right here. I was like, I'll give you 50% of what he's doing, guaranteed. Like, I was like, that guy, he is there. He has got it down. He sent me show notes beforehand, and it was like, this is when we're hitting this topic. This is happening. This is here. There's a clip here. There's this. I was like, good God, what is this? This is professional. I am not professional.
Just to put it in perspective, this is kind of how our pregame goes. We're prepping. We'll get on Discord together about, what time do we go live? 8:30-ish. We get on there about 8:15. Like,
we say 8:30. Rob showed up at 8:40.
I had a frozen pizza in there.
We left him in the waiting room for 10 minutes just to teach him a lesson. Gary sends show notes. Let me look in here. Let's see. What? Y'all ready? That's a show note. Are y'all ready?
Oh yeah. We doing this? We doing this tonight or not? Rob, where are you at? Hey, Rob, make sure you go with the super small hoodie tonight.
Yeah. Make sure it's tight.
Make sure it's snug. Snug.
We tried to get some viewers up in here. Snug, smelly. That's what I'm asking that for out of you, Rob. That's what I need. That's quality stuff. Hey, let me show you something, you guys. Hold on. Here we go. Let me give you a little something, a little taste here. Where'd it go? I lost it. Hold on. There we go. Look at that there. What do you think about that?
Yep.
Mm.
It's a good one.
Man. My favorite line with that, because the Andersons and Ric Flair were supposed to be related. They were cousins. And Arn Anderson cuts this promo one time and he says, "What kind of cross-pollination has to be going on in this family to get this amount of talent all in one gene pool," or something like that, man. And of course, Tully, man, maybe the coolest bad guy of all time.
Well, this is a little preview for you guys because we're about to get into a conversation about factions. We ran a Twitter poll earlier this evening asking you if we had to pick a rando topic, because new NWA content means that we've got to come up with ideas to talk about. And of course, the most important people when deciding what we want to hear is the audience. And that's you guys in the chat and everywhere else. We want to talk to you guys about what you want to do. We threw up gimmicks, we threw up factions, we threw up masked wrestlers, all of it. And you guys picked factions today. So I hope you're here in the chat. If you voted on factions and you brought your notes, hope these guys have some in mind. I don't really know even how to necessarily start with it, except to say that that's one of the greatest factions of all time. That is the Four Horsemen. And what better way do you start an NWA discussion of factions than to throw to the Four Horsemen? Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson, Ric Flair. That was J.J. Dillon there. There was no Ole. I'm not sure which time period this was from. I guess that would have been Ole, right? Rob might have recognized the picture. I don't know. But
I didn't see Ole in that particular one, but
no, there's only 4 people in that picture. There's no actual
JJ.
Fourth Horseman there. Yeah, JJ's there managing the group, but
well, here's the question.
Did you
kick us off? I mean, from an NWA perspective, just right out of the gate, is there a better faction than the Four Horsemen?
No, there's not, but there are others that come up to it. I think J. Cal mentioned Freebirds. I'm a big Freebird fan. That's kind of a sentimental favorite to me. Terry Gordy actually graduated from the high school that I'm the assistant principal at. Ridgeland High School. It was called Rossville High School then, right outside of Chattanooga. But then also the Legion of Doom faction from 83, 84. I'm not talking about the Road Warriors now. I'm talking about the Road Warriors, but I'm also talking about King Kong Bundy and Jake the Snake Roberts, and under those auspices, man, that was a pretty groundbreaking faction. But no, there's no greater faction than the Horsemen.
Yeah, the Legion of Doom. I mean, that was like all the top heels in the world, and Paul Ellering had them in there together, and it was like, I mean, that was almost too good to be true. I mean, they obviously didn't last as long as the Four Horsemen. I mean, the Four Horsemen, one of the reasons I would say the Four Horsemen are so prolific is because they spanned, multiple decades, and there was multiple iterations of it. So that's up for debate too, about, how that affects the, lifespan of the Four Horsemen. But, they're probably going to be the best just for the sheer fact that they've always been a thing. And they were always relevant and always, notable whenever they were present. And but I agree with Jay Cal. For me, growing up, the Freebirds were really the first faction that I became aware of. And when I started watching wrestling as a kid, the Freebirds were, there were tag teams, but then the Freebirds were a faction because there was more than 2, and that was kind of my first exposure to the idea of that. And so they stick out in my mind as a favorite. And they were just cool dudes, man. They were from Bad Street, Atlanta, GA. And that was a cool gimmick, and it always resonated with me as a kid.
You mentioned relevance.
Did love that song.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, heck yeah, man. You mentioned relevance, and relevance doesn't always mean like, hey, you're you're vying for the world's title. One of the things that I like about the NWA Power era that we're in is like it seems like every match is meaningful. And so when I go back and think like when I was really getting into it, 84, 85 through 88 timeframe, it seemed like every match had meaning. And I'm thinking specifically of like Paul Jones. I don't know if you guys remember Paul Jones had an army that had this like legendary war with Boogie Woogie Man Jimmy Valiant. And again,
James Lawrence dropped that in the chat just a minute ago. Paul Jones Army. Yeah.
Yes. Paul
Sorry,
Jones,
I just wanted to give credit there that he had brought it up. Yeah.
Good job, man. Yeah, that's a good shout out there, James Lawrence. They amassed all these heels that many of them had been top baby faces like Manny Fernandez, the Raging Bull, or Pistol Pez Watley. Then you had guys like T. Joe Khan, and you had Baron Von Raschke, some legends in there. You had the Barbarian, and they just waged this eternal war against Jimmy Valiant, the Boogie Woogie Man. There weren't titles on the lines. This was just a human interest story. But I remember like I was as much into that story. I was as much in tune to that match, the hair versus hair match. Jimmy Valiant was in a number of them with Pez Watley and with Paul Jones eventually. But that story was as intriguing to me as anything in the title picture was. And that's something I think that NWA does so well now. Like all these stories are so relevant, like you were saying, Will. Even though they're not title stories per se, they're relevant. They're just from a human interest piece. So you got to put Paul Jones's army up there too. At least in the Crockett era, Mid Atlantic, they're one of the great factions, man.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some of the things that you guys are throwing out there, and we're gonna jump in the chat, so you guys keep them coming. I want to see what you guys think of when you think of factions. One that popped up to me is somebody mentioned the Heenan family. So now there's another thing. Like, so what to you guys? I've always heard like different terminology for this. So there are stables and there are factions. Do you consider those the same thing? Is there a difference? What's the difference here?
That was my question too. Cause I mean, I in my mind, I guess it's two different names for the same thing. Maybe there is a subtle difference or something like that. But I think those are synonymous unless I'm mistaken.
There is now we are quibbling here and we are splitting hairs, but just to give you a good example of a stable that was not a faction, James J. Dillon at one point simultaneously managed the Nature Boy Buddy Landell and Tully Blanchard Enterprises, but the two didn't work together. They were separate entities under the auspices of J. Dillon's guidance. So that was, in my mind, that's a stable that was not a faction. But in most cases, I think you're right. I think we're splitting hairs. Typically stables have some sort of loose identity with one another. There's usually some manager or personality that guides them. So I wouldn't want to get too deep into like, hey, that's actually a stable, not a faction. But there's a subtle difference, and I think the Landell Blanchard is evidence par excellence. There, just to throw some French at you.
Well, it's weird because you say that, and then like I always heard the Heenan family referred to as a stable, which makes sense because it's like Bobby Heenan's just managing all those different wrestlers. But at the same time, I also recall like they worked like a faction because Heenan would send these guys like after Hogan, like he's trying to take out Hogan. So it was like they were technically working together. And that's not disputing what you were saying, by the way, Rob. I'm just saying in general, it's kind of weird. They kind of blurred those lines. And I just recall them very well because that was like my era of wrestling, like right when I jumped in. I definitely recall the Heenan family. And I recall like even leading up to like WrestleMania 7 and stuff, and like Boss Man wanted the Intercontinental title off of like Mr. Perfect. And he had to work through every member of the Heenan family to get to Mr. Perfect. Like it was just one after another matches. And before Heenan would grant him Mr. Perfect signing on the dotted line to defend the title against him. And I don't know, that just stands out to me. Some other folks in the chat here. Let's see, let's roll back up here for a minute. Let's just throw out some names. I did want to mention Mike Digital when I said we demanded Snug and Smelly out of you, he said that was AKA Van Vader. And I did like that. So I could call you Doc Vader.
Doc Vader.
Let's see here. So Dangerous Alliance. Oh yeah, that's definitely a big one. That's from my era, the times that I saw like some WCW, Paulie Dangerously and his boys. That was actually, what was that? That was like I mean, at one point that was like Steve Austin and who else? Like Rick. Who was in the Dangerous Alliance? Trying to remember like all the members of that.
Wasn't Pillman in there for a minute? Yeah. I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, I want to say that's the case. Yeah, look, it says so it lists like different versions of it, but in CW at any point I'm seeing listed here according to the Wikipedia, which is always accurate. Of course, the leader is Paulie Dangerously, but at one point is Arn Anderson, Bobby Eaton, Larry Zbyszko, Medusa, Michael P.S. Hayes, Rick Rude, and Steve Austin. That's a pretty stacked lineup there.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember Rick Rude most prominently being part of the Dangerous Alliance. That was definitely my childhood. He was always one of the top heels, and seeing him.
Yeah. Rick Rude.
There's a good point brought up in the chat. Mike Digital, he brought up the point that is a stable something that has a figurehead, like a Bobby Heenan or a Paul Ellering or something like that, and a faction doesn't. It's just a group of wrestlers. That could be a differentiator. I never really thought of it that way. Rob, what's your take on that?
Well, but then what you would have is like the Four Horsemen at one point. I mean, J.J. Dillon has been the manager. So that's kind of weird because I would consider them like arguably the greatest faction, but at any group of four of them, there was also the fifth technically.
But they didn't always have a figurehead though, did they? I mean,
I don't think they always did. Yeah.
Not always, but they almost always did. You had Hiro Matsuda, and then you had Woman for a while playing that role. All you would need to do, though, to disprove that, and don't get me wrong, I think you're right. There's not always a manager per se, but you always have a player manager, kind of like a Pete Rose, who was manager and player at the same time. You always have like Kevin Sullivan, for example, in his organization. Kevin Sullivan played the role of the manager. Flair, in the absence of a manager, played that role. And all you have to do is point to one counterexample to disprove the faction stable manager rule, and we obviously can do that. So certainly in wrestling, those kind of fixed absolutes are very rarely the case. But I think you always have somebody that at least functionally serves in that role as the leader or the player manager. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's a fair distinction to draw. I just think that when we get into separating stables and factions, we're really coming close to splitting hairs about differences that aren't that big a deal.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we got to mention the Von Erichs. I mean, that definitely, when you're looking at the scope of history, I mean, you got to bring up the Von Erich family as a faction.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's weird. That one's, I would never even think of them, but I guess that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I mean,
because they're a family, so we don't think of them as a faction. It's like they're together out of necessity because they share the same last name. But yeah, they have the legendary feud with the Freebirds. They were perennially after the Ric Flair's title, and of course Kerry finally won the belt. But who's the leader of that faction? For a long time it was David Von Erich. Fritz obviously is the father figure, but he played a backstage role for much of that time, and then Kerry was the one who won the belt, but Kevin was kind of the statesman of the family. And so who was the leader of that? You don't have a clear-cut manager per se, other than maybe Fritz as the promoter of the world class. So.
Really good point. JTEX was mentioned by the Alliance blog, the JTEX Corporation. Is that the one with, was that in like Gary Hart? Like I vaguely remember this one, so this is getting into a higher level of education than for the doc and a JCal. I feel like,
we call in the historical big guns for that one.
And Gary Hart, man, that's another one who you're mentioning there with JTech and everything that his work in World Class primarily. That's what I'm familiar with, that body of work. He's done some other things, but he had the Dingo Warrior and the Missing Link and Rick Rude for a time, and some other guys that were one of the sinister personalities. He always had that very, very dark horror movie, cult movie, almost like gravitas about him. And so Gary Hart's another one that's one of the greats, and whatever he was doing with his factions. So
that's a really good one. Let's see, who else is the chat mentioning? I don't want to leave you guys out. I'm seeing all kinds of stuff. Hot Stuff International, the Elite, the Russians. Wait, who is that? The Russians, Barbarian, Baron von Raschke, Manny Fernandez, and Shasta Watley.
That's the army. That's Paul
Jones' army.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay, I'm with you. Triple Threat in ECW. That was another one. Who was that? That was Shane, Douglas, and Bam Bam. And am I right on that? I forget who the other one was. And let's see, Varsity Squad. Yeah, that was good stuff.
Rick Steiner, Kevin Sullivan, and Steve Williams.
Yeah, Dr. Death.
Dr. Death Williams.
Yeah, wasn't IRS in that too? Mike Rotunda?
Yeah. Yes. He was when Rick Steiner left.
Right. Front row with the dropping the Nation of Domination in there. So
yeah, absolutely. You gotta mention them.
Some big now we're getting a little came out of that one.
Now we're getting a little more recent. I feel like we are following history now, and we'll end up in some of the modern stuff. But we definitely gotta cover.
Well, you think about the Nation of. I was just thinking about the Nation of Domination. I mean, you think about those guys. I mean, that feels like a shorter lived faction. I think even Front Row said that, but the you're talking about The Rock and Ron Simmons, and you're talking about D'Lo Brown and Mark Henry, like all of those guys. The Godfather was in there. Some of them under different names. Chris Candido was the other person, by the way, in ECW that I could not think of just a second ago. Skandar Akbar had a stick. Yeah, I was just looking at that one.
That was in the AWA, I believe. Is that right? Skandar's was.
Yeah. Let's see here. I'm gonna throw something else at you real quick. I got this. So WWE did a 40 most dominant factions of all time series here. So that's what I was looking at. That's where that picture came from. So there you go. Some more Four Horsemen. I don't think there's actually like a real ranking here. I don't even remember that version of the Four Horsemen.
Can we just acknowledge Arn Anderson's pants?
For real. I don't remember. I thought Sid and Barry like traded places. I didn't realize that. Like this is what I remember. So where it's Arn and Tully, Flair and Barry Windham, and then you got JJ down there. So anyway,
for my money, that's the best version of the Horsemen right there.
Yeah,
that's the ones they threw in the Hall of Fame, right?
Yes.
There's the Shield. Would have to acknowledge them. John Moxley, Seth Rollins, and Roman Reigns. Looking real happy to be alive. Oh, how about these guys? You remember these guys? JBL, when he was acting like a W, and he had Orlando. What was his name? Orlando Jones, and
Bloom,
or is it
Orlando Bloom?
I always get confused with like Orlando Jordan and Orlando Jones. And like one of them was the make 7 Up yours guy, but I can't remember. Is that the JBL's Cabinet is what they're calling that one?
Yeah.
There's Evolution. Also worth mentioning, right? Is this boring that I'm just showing the pictures of people here?
No, I feel like we're watching like a slideshow of your vacation or something.
Yeah, this is good. There we go. This is when we were walking out to the beach the first day.
But you in the front?
Yeah, that's me in the front. It's my dad behind me there looking confused. Oh, man.
Yeah, I mean,
This is the Wolf Pack.
Yeah.
What were you saying, Will?
I mean, this is going to be the WWE, version of the greatest factions. I don't think it's going to line up probably with our viewpoint. They're definitely notable factions, but it's going to be their version of history.
The Flock.
Yeah.
There you go. How about that? What an easy job when they just had to sit out in the crowd all day. They just had to hang out ringside. There's your boys, Will.
Brood. I love the Brood. Hey, but I mean, I love the Brood just because of their theme song. That was the reason I liked them. And the entrance. That was the fanfare for me.
Yeah. Agreed. That guy. That one.
Yep.
Just those sunglasses they'd pick out. That was spectacular. Rob, any backstage stories you have with the Brood?
No, I don't. I always kind of dug that too. I like the whole vampire gimmick. I always felt like the fire was sort of a safety hazard, but no, they're cool, man. They good looking guys, good workers, all of them individually. Gangrel and Edge and Christian, man, they were at one point, man, they were hotter than anybody. No pun intended there with the fire. See what I did?
Should we wear matching blouses like they did maybe for our show?
Man, you know what? Blouse. Rob's like right there with the Edge. Like he's almost.
And that's kind of what Gary and I do with the denim. We kind of match. So that is us.
Oh man, I'll stop sharing the screen for a minute.
I agree with you. I think their freaking music was awesome, man. But we talking about, we got to throw up there when we're talking about greatest factions of all time. Though. I mean, we're going to settle on what the greatest faction of all time is, or can you even? Is that even an argument that can even be settled upon?
Yeah, I mean that's there's so much. I mean, you can't really settle that. But I mean, that's why I started out with the question. I mean, is it the Four Horsemen? Like, I mean, is there any argument that it's not?
I'd like to see the argument against it. So I'd like for us just to set the Horsemen aside because they have like a place of honor. So the Horsemen notwithstanding, I think this is the NWA podcast. We agree on that. Of course, there may be some difference of opinion in the chat out there in the larger community, but the Horsemen notwithstanding, take them out of the equation. Who's the greatest faction?
That's a tough one. I mean, if you're talking about, obviously you're talking about all through history. I mean, my gut would say the Freebirds just because of the impact and, their body of work. But I mean, and this may be way out of left field, but I mean, the NWO kind of changed wrestling, I mean, when the Outsiders invaded and, we saw Hogan as a heel for the first time. I mean, as much as that eventually obviously led to the collapse, not the NWO specifically, but, the WCW eventually collapsed. And, now knowing that it ended so poorly, we kind of judge it a little differently. But I mean, you think about in the heyday of the 90s where the NWO was kind of the top of the game in wrestling. I mean, we can't leave them out of the discussion as one of the greatest factions of all time just because of that impact.
I just want to say, like, right off the bat, how impressed I am that we've gotten this far into the conversation. And one name has not come up that I'm surprised of. And it came up in the chat earlier from the opposite person of who you would have thought would have brought it up. And I'm talking about Strictly Business. Wrestling with the MMA brought up Strictly Business right off the top in the chat there. And Rob hasn't yet to bring them up. And so that's very interesting.
They're obviously, they're the one in the rebrand. They're sort of the only faction that we've really had yet, I guess, unless you you had Aaron Stevens and Question Mark Jr. that came out there, but really they're the only faction. But no, they're just not in that discussion yet. I think this is one of those things where they could certainly materialize and be great. You got to have we got to get all the belts on them, and they certainly have the talent to do it. But right now, the elder statesman, the governing principle that makes strictly business worth talking about is Nick Aldis. And so you get him out and you don't have a faction. Much like, I guess, the Horseman of Flair, but you could argue that Arn Anderson was very essential to that too, as much as Flair was. But so I don't put strictly business. I mean, they're the faction. They're the only faction in a very slim pool of factions, I guess, that we haven't talked about since the rebrand began. And we'll see what happens. The future will bear that out. But they're not in one of the greats right now. I mean, I would say that.
Yeah. What about what Front Row mentioned? The NWO at one point had 62 members. That's impressive.
Yeah, and that's what I say. That's also what I mean when I say, like, we know where it ended up. It basically became just like everyone in WCW was in the NWO, and there was like 3 people that weren't, and it was just, that was kind of, everything was going downhill. But NWO, when I think of the NWO, I think of the Outsiders, Nash and Hall. I think of Hollywood Hogan, Bischoff, and maybe like the Giant, Big Show.
I was gonna say maybe the Giant would be thrown in there.
Yeah, but I mean,
for some reason, Conan for me always rolls around in
the original NWO. That's kind of what I picture, and I know there was other people in and out, but those were kind of the ones that I would consider original NWO.
It was kind of crazy at one point. I remember just watching WCW, and it had blown up so much that, of course, it split off into the Wolfpack, and you had the NWO Hollywood, NWO Wolfpack. At one point, you had the Latino World Order, and there was, I feel like there was even more versions of that. I know there was like the BWO, but I think that was ECW, and it was just kind of crazy. Literally today, like after work, I was sitting at my computer and I was watching something and I fell asleep, and I woke up to WWE Network having rolled through on YouTube, and it was from WCW Road Wild, and it was Goldberg versus NWO Wolfpack and NWO Hollywood. So it was like a triple threat, like over the top Rumble kind of thing or something. It was kind of crazy. Whatever happened to Scott Norton? Where is that guy at? Because I remember him in the NWO, and I loved that guy.
I just pulled him up on my phone.
Is he working for WWE?
Like, wasn't he in the NWO?
He was in that matchup, and Scott Norton just looked like he could punch down a freaking brick wall. Like he looked like a tough dude. So anyway, he always stood out to me when I was younger. I remember really digging that guy, and I loved using him on WCW versus the World.
Was a NWO.
Yeah, he would be original too. I mean, he sticks out of my mind. But
so we've narrowed it down to 60 original members of the 62 that ultimately. to me, the NWO is Scott, Hall, Kevin Nash, and Hogan and Bischoff. That's it. Everybody else is even 6. Everybody else is they're not the Outsiders and Hogan. The Outsiders, Hogan, and Bischoff. That's the NWO to me.
Yeah. My thing would be, I think it's worth going back. I mean, we talked about them briefly just as I was scrolling through the slideshow there, but dude, evolution is something to think about. I don't know that it played out exactly how they wanted it to, but when you think about the idea of what I think it was intended to be, where you've got like Ric Flair being the legend and like Triple H being the current guy on top, and then the 2 new up and coming people. I think probably the idea essentially was probably going to be Randy Orton was the next star and Batista was just the muscle, but it kind of played out that both of them just elevated by that whole thing. I mean, when you look back, like that's a stacked faction right there, and they kept it locked down. I mean, it was those four, and they worked together pretty well. So I was a fan of what they were doing. Got a brand new Motorhead song.
Yeah. This goes back to the influence of the Horsemen, because the Horsemen obviously were heavily influential to the NWO, and they had a great war with the NWO there with Dean Malenko and those guys, and then D-Generation X, kind of formed in response to that. And then Evolution kind of formed out of response to that, and you have this whole kind of this lineage that roots back in the Horsemen. And this goes back to what we were saying before about how you can't even have a discussion about factions without looking at the Horsemen as the perennial great all time. So much influence, and most of those guys will tell you too, even though there was some personal heat there between members of the NWO and the Horsemen. The influence is obvious, writ large across any screen that you ever saw them on.
Let's see. I wonder who. Let's refer back to the chat, folks. If you haven't already and you're in here, hit subscribe, please. We love you guys. Let's see here. Freebird's getting a lot of love in the chat. Wow. Tim Mahler like Demolition better than the Road Warriors. Wow. That is, I think you're disappointing somebody in here. What about the Job Squad, says Wrestling with MMA. The Job Squad. Remember those guys? Al Snow. Dave Will says Scott Norton has a book. He's got it. Recommends it. Buy it. Good stuff. He was also on Dark Side of the Ring. How about that?
One of the funnest factions to watch, and I know they intermittently aligned with Paul Jones in the Army, but Ivan Koloff, Nikita Koloff, and Crusher Khrushchev for the Russians. And at one point, I think Don Kernodle was there with Ivan. The Russians, man, that's like one of the first organizations that as a kid that I was like afraid of. I was terrified of Nikita and Ivan. When we'd go to the local Coliseum to see them, man, it's one of the ones where I wouldn't want to get anywhere around those guys. And they had some epic, just tight, colossal feuds with the Road Warriors and the Rock and Roll Express. And man, tag team and faction wrestling back in those days was the best that it's ever been. It was so good.
Yeah, I think it's one thing that's missing, or at least it's not done super well now. It's kind of one of those, you guys know my thoughts on tag team wrestling. I think factions fall right in there as something that is a fine art in wrestling. They can be really bad or they can be really good. And I don't think it's as valued in current wrestling as it used to be. I mean, you had all kind of factions historically, and now it seems like some of them are just thrown together. Every now and again, there's ones that are worth talking about or that have some value, but especially when you look at WWE, and I don't mean to pick on them or harp on them or anything like that, but I mean, they are the most visible wrestling promotion, and there's like these factions that'll show up and they'll be around for a month and then they'll just disband. And it's just like, there's not the longevity and the gravitas that factions had historically. And, is there any factions? Obviously we talked about Strictly Business as kind of the only faction really in the NWA in this modern iteration of it. But are there any factions that stand out to you guys' minds in the last 5 years, even in other promotions? I mean, obviously the Bullet Club is mentioned here. I mean, that's kind of that one's almost larger. I mean, it spanned a couple of different promotions. The Elite, that we have an All Elite, but are there any other noteworthy factions that stick out in you guys' mind over recent history?
Well, we saw photos of the Shield earlier. I mean, I think they're worth mentioning. The Shield would definitely be a big one.
You got the Inner Circle, and you've got Villain Enterprises. Are both very notable factions. Villain Enterprises is stacked, man, with PCO and uh, uh, Brody King and of course Marty Skrull. They are stacked as a faction. But freaking the Inner Circle, man. They're one of the most entertaining, and they are running roughshod over all of AEW right now.
I mean, I was trying to think.
Would you
in WWE? I mean, the New Day would be top of the list for me. Just in terms of that entertainment value and the skill and just how they work together and the presence that they bring. But I mean, I'm just thinking, in WWE, has there been any factions besides? Now, I could just be blanking, or I could just be blocking out, that besides the Shield and the New Day. I mean, has there been any worthwhile factions in the WWE?
You mean in the last few years?
Yeah, I mean, last 5 years.
Huh. That's a good question. I don't know. Now I'm going to pull that slideshow back up and start scrolling through it to see, because I remember the McMahon family, obviously, and you would. I
guess the Wyatt family.
Yeah, the Wyatt family. So there is that. I mean, DX has popped up from time to time. I don't think you'd count them, though, since they weren't started in the last 5 years.
J-Cal says the club in WWE. I mean, I guess he's referring to the OC, I guess, as they were called in the later days. I mean, yeah, but I mean, that didn't really, I don't know. It didn't feel like a faction to me. I mean, I know it was, but I mean, it felt like
it's almost like a club almost, because it spans so many different organizations. You know what I mean? You had guys out in New Japan.
It's happening right now.
It's almost like a club, man. Oh, you mean the club?
I mean, like the Bullet Club. Yeah. Like it's almost like the Psychotronic Lit Society. Where people are signed up, but all right, never mind.
Don't get offended at us that you just drove this car right off a cliff, and then you got mad at us because we're about to die.
Who mad?
What's in that right hand, Rob? What's down there in that right hand?
That.
It opened something.
For my other right hand. This is a Kentucky Bourbon Barrel Ale.
Oh yeah, Undisputed Era. I totally, I guess NXT, but Undisputed Era for sure, man. I mean, that's definitely worth mentioning. They are.
How did that not come up?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, when I think of WWE, I kind of disconnect it from NXT. I know it's the same company, but it just feels like a different league.
All right, fair enough.
What I was trying to say about the club thing was like everybody's been in that, man. From the Young Bucks to everybody's been in the club. It's not really a faction. It's more of it's like a club. It's an organization. It's a literary society.
That's the one, Gary. The Oddities. There you go.
There you go. That's the real club.
We figured out the one faction that's better than the Four Horsemen.
Was Sable in with the Oddities?
I don't think so. And we're talking about, and we got masked wrestlers in there too, so that's good.
Yeah. What is this? It's just a Jim Cornette stable.
Does
that count?
I don't.
Vader and Bulldog. Oh, how about Right to Censor?
Oh yeah, man.
There you go.
That's what I imagine, Gary. If I ever see you in a suit, I imagine it doesn't have sleeves under
it. You're probably right. It's I got the Val Venis. God, I wish I could remember all their names. Like I can't. I feel like Val Venis kept his, but remember the Godfather got turned into the Good Father. The
What was
Steven
the
Richards.
faction, J. Cal, there was a faction of the Blue Bloods, maybe, where like Ricky Morton joined it, turned heel on Robert, and became like Earl Richard Morton or something like that, Lord Richard Morton, at some point. And I think you had like there are two or three. They did this whole like British thing, you know, like kind of like the British invasion thing that Aldis and Doug Williams had done. What was that called, man? I think it was called the Blue Bloods. Or maybe I'm wrong.
That does sound familiar. There's your Russians there.
Yes. Crusher Khrushchev, who would
Who are
eventually
these
become a
guys?
member of Demolition.
What was this team? Come on, chat room. Where you at? This was a faction? Lance Storm, Test, and Christian? Does it have a name? WWE photo? Was that their name? Wait, William Regal was there with them? Un-Americans. I do remember that now that I see his shirt. I do recall that.
Yes, and Cal pointed out, yeah, it was the York Foundation that he joined as Richard Morton. That's right. Yeah, that was kind of an era that I was and Earl of Eaton was in the Blue Bloods. That's kind of a time in wrestling that I was starting to get a little discouraged there for about 2 or 3 years. But yeah,
so
interesting stuff.
So there's a couple of tag teams here with a manager. Is that considered a stable or a faction?
To me, it's a tag team.
Yeah, it's just be a tag team with a manager, right?
Yeah, that's what I would think. So I don't know about that Vader and Bulldog thing. Now, these guys I do remember, and I was going to bring them up earlier. It's almost like an early version of the NWO before the NWO was the thing. But remember when $1 Million Man had like the $1 Million Corporation or something?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you had like Kama, the Supreme Fighting Machine, and I think IRS was there, but Sid Vicious and 1-2-3 Kid. They had King Kong Bundy at one point, I recall, as well. And I remember because they buried the Undertaker. I remember it was like all of them teamed up to like King Kong Bundy stole the urn or something, and I don't know. I think Yokozuna helped him. You can tell when we get to WWE stuff, like Rob is like, I don't care about any of this. Like, this is garbage. But there's some boys we mentioned earlier. There's our Freebirds right there. He's good looking.
Yeah. One of the greats right there. Of course, Buddy Roberts not pictured in that.
I got to get some fingerless gloves. Nexus, that's one. We have.
Yeah. How about the Nexus? Yeah.
Look at that. He's
been a while. Hair. Man, he hung around for a while till that recent drop. Like what was it? Like 15 years almost or something, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he was like the last remaining guy from that faction, right?
Yeah. Stu Bennett there in the center. Man, I thought he was going to be like top heel in the WWE. And I think it was like injuries that set him back. But Justin Gabriel's in there over on the left. He's in Ring of Honor now. And his name just slipped my mind. But he's faced Nick Aldis for the 10 pounds of gold, I recall, in a match. David Otunga, Ryback. But I think at this time he was known as Skip Sheffield. And he would say, yip, 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 what it do? I remember that.
Horrible.
Can't imagine
like,
why that didn't
I don't
work.
like Ryback.
I don't like anybody who wears armbands.
God, whoa, wow. Didn't know that was such a hot button issue.
I mean, we're all thinking.
I
was like, you can't wear armbands, dude. We don't like parties that wear armbands.
I guess I'll take those. This is the NWA Podcast armbands out of our online store that we're going to launch.
Where did that come from? I did not know there was Rob's disgust.
You never know the take. You never know the take you're going to get from Rob, and I mean that, Rob, in an endearing way.
It's like my brain when I see something that goes through a couple filters first, and usually the first is like, some sort of historical or sociological topic, just because that's my area of specialized study. So I'm like, what is this? What are these jokers, these militants out here in armbands? That's not good.
I don't like armbands.
The Darewolf. Yeah, the Darewolf. I do recall that. Cryptozoomauler. Thank you for that. Also, Alliance Blog says Michael Tarver, who was in the Nexus, ended up representing NWA in New Japan. And Damian Redman in the chat. Thank you, Damian. He said that team we were looking at was actually Camp Cornette. And it was Bulldog and Owen and Yoko, who was later replaced by Vader.
Okay.
So
that makes more sense. I was just
weird.
confused by some of those pictures that appeared to just be a tag team with a manager. But yeah, I agree. That's not really a faction. So I guess there was more to it.
Yeah, interesting. All right. What else? What else? Do you remember who, I do recall this moment, though, that we're seeing this attack here. And I don't remember if this is the exact moment of the attack, but you remember who's missing from this group that's never in these pictures. And that was Daniel Bryan, right? Because he choked out Justin Roberts outside the ring with a necktie. Remember that?
Yep.
And it turns out can't be choking anybody.
Yep.
And
It's like,
so
for me, I'm just like, man, this went through like 8-9 levels of like production, vetting, and no one said, hey, maybe let's not do armbands. But they think that's, is that, am I the only one who think that that's not a good look?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh my God. All I know is right now that we are getting these armbands made and it's going to be required for the live shows.
You have to wear them.
those are going to be given away, by the way, for free to anybody who enjoys the show, so that you can all show up at live NWA events with "This is the NWA" armbands on. And just to see Rob's head explode. And I gotta say this, I don't think this is out of the way, but has anybody else always just thought that Darren Young looked like a ultra tan John Cena? Like, he just does.
No.
I see it.
I'm gonna go hard no on that one.
All right. Well, just me. Hey, here's these guys. What are they called? The Triad or something like that? Or the Jersey Triad. I think somebody actually mentioned that in the chat. Bam Bam and DDP and Canyon there. Who better than Canyon?
I love Canyon, man. He's one of those ones
I always
kind of
like Canyon.
he didn't get enough due, man. But Canyon was money every time, man.
They knew he was good too. In my other show with the movies, we did Ready to Rumble not too long ago. Like, he choreographed all of that stuff. Like the fight scenes or the wrestling scenes.
Mm-hmm.
DDP. Bam looks so much smaller than I remember him feeling like he was there. It's like he lost a bunch of weight. Also, scalp tattoos. That's where it's at.
And fingerless gloves. We got to bring fingerless gloves back.
I mean, that's the thing here. Here's the Dungeon of Doom. That's about as goofy as you're ever going to see Ming look.
Yeah.
That's the guy that will like rip your nose off. He's all in on that. What was Zeus in the Dungeon of Doom? Is that who this is? Why is Jimmy Hart there? What is this?
What is happening? Rob, tell us.
Rob,
That's the horseman.
Rob, what's going on here?
That's the horseman.
That's the horseman.
Yeah, this has to be some sort of rendition of. Gosh, man, we need J Cal. Who is that? That Dungeon of Doom, man. That doesn't look like an iteration of Dungeon of Doom that I remember.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But that's like Barbarian back there and Kevin Sullivan, Arn Anderson. That's definitely Zeus with his drawn on eyebrows. Just looking good. Jimmy Hart, though, of all people. And then that guy, that other guy. I don't know who that is at all.
I don't know, man.
Getting in the chat that it was the Jim Hurt era. James Lawrence said, "Is that the name of the faction? The Jim Hurt era?"
That's great.
Because that would be
The
pretty
Alliance
fantastic.
to End Hulkamania. That's what it was. The Alliance to End Hulkamania.
Okay.
No, I think that's right.
I'm not going to be able to confirm.
Who's next?
So,
What is happening here?
They drawn and quartering somebody. Look like.
Oh, there you go. There's the New Blood. Remember them?
Oh, yeah.
I just got to look real quick. Are we losing everybody? Is everybody still here?
No, we're still going strong, man. This will be a new segment. We'll just go through pictures and talk about them.
Okay, help me out here. There's Chuck Palumbo. There's Jotty the Bull, I think, and then Mark Jindrak, Shot O'Hare. That's above average Mike Sanders, and that's Sean Stasiak, and I cannot remember the bald dude, the guy who looks like he would not be hanging out with any of these other people. I don't know who it is. Dave Will says the muscular guy was Mr. Jeep Swinson, who was later like the Ultimate Solution or something. They got heat because that was something out of Nazi Germany and changed his name to something else. Oh,
boom! There you go. So no.
Thank you, Damian Redmond. Where did you come from, buddy? Reno was this guy's name. I do remember that now. Now that you say it, Reno was the bald guy here. Johnny the Bull Stramboli should have been a star. You know what I remember about him most? Besides, I did like him, and he teamed with Big Vito. I remember for a while there. They had the main event. No, not the main event Mafia, but they were something like that, like the Mafia or something. And but I remember he did the flying leg drop, which was super impressive. But do you remember he did it to the outside of the ring at one point? Does anybody remember that? Chat, hope you remember that. Somebody was outside the ring and he did the flying leg drop, like off the top ropes to the outside of the ring where it is concrete. And it's a flying leg drop. And I'm pretty sure that's the last time I ever saw him. Because why would you do that? That is, he broke his ass is what I'm trying to say. Ooh. There was a huge crack in it.
God. Ugh, you guys.
Freaking
I had to
idiot.
add that last part in. I couldn't have.
It's funny, dude. We're all giggling like 9-year-old boys.
Oh man! But how clever of a name was above average Mike Sanders? Above average.
It was all right. I mean,
Shot O'Hare lived near me for a little while. He was like, I had a friend who was doing, was a stylist, and he came through. He was like big in that world for a little while there. He changed his name to Sean Hare, which was super clever considering. And, but yeah, unfortunately, he had a lot of personal demons. But that guy I remember him being, just a big dude, but he was like dropping swantons on people and stuff. FBI is who I was trying to think of earlier. Thank you. All right, let's move on. Natural Born Thrillers. Oh, wait. That's what I meant. They were the Natural Born Thrillers. I think I said New Blood, but that wasn't them. They weren't the New Blood. They were the Natural Born Thrillers. New Blood was like when Kidman and everybody started teaming up to take out Hogan and the old guys. Alliance Block's telling us, as Jake House says, originally the role of Mike Sanders was rumored to go to Scrap Iron Adam Pearce. You're learning something, people. You're learning something.
Did anybody have we mentioned like the Hart Foundation tonight at all?
No, and I don't know why.
What in the world are we talking about, guys? We're talking about the new who, and we haven't mentioned the Hart Foundation. We're giving all this time to these armband wearing.
Oh, it's Bret Hart.
That's what's up. Oh, I thought it was Jason Voorhees, man.
Bret
I was like,
Hart. Bret Hart's behind the mask.
We're about to lose Gary.
We're not talking about masked wrestlers tonight.
It just dawned on me. It's like, wait a second now. We haven't talked about the Hart Foundation.
Yeah, that's a big miss on our part. We're
yeah,
sorry.
that was a good one.
I put this on J Cal though, because J Cal should have been on top of that. That's not on us. We're out here doing the heavy work, and he should have been keeping us on our P's and Q's.
Yeah, if there's anything about our show that you guys don't like,
J Cal's
fault.
J Cal definitely says he mentioned the Hart Foundation already. So.
Oh, God. That's on us. That's on us. That's on us. We'll take that one.
Yeah. Which started, of course, as a tag team with Jim the Anvil Neidhart and Bret the Hitman Hart, but later became like an actual stable with other people. With Bret the Hitman Hart, Jim Neidhart, Owen Hart, British Bulldog, Brian Pillman. Am I missing somebody?
Jimmy Hart was managing British Bulldog, I think you said. Man, we actually went to we took the girls to New York City the year before last, the year that WrestleMania was in New York, and we didn't go to WrestleMania, but we went to the Hall of Fame induction. And this the night that Bret Hart got jumped on the podium. You know, so that's anyway. I don't know. Yeah, that's cool.
Maybe you should mute his mic before he just walks out. Just screw you guys.
He's done with it, man. He's embarrassed.
Oh, man, I wish I could just. I didn't know I could do that till just now. Here. Okay.
I guess. Sorry, no, I had to go.
Oh, look at that! Nice.
Okay.
Yeah,
I like it.
So bad now.
Go ahead, put it on, Will, right now.
Okay.
Oh man, I used to always want one of the Hitman jerseys for like his hockey team.
Remember that commercial, man, when he's walking to the ring and he takes his glasses off and he gives it to the kid, you know? That I always wanted to pair those glasses, dude. Bret Hart, man. Oh.
Why is it just showing me now?
It's still just
It's fine. It's what the people
figured
want.
out some tricks.
It's what the people want.
Yeah.
We're all in trouble because Gary has now learned how to use Zoom, and he's gonna just randomly start sharing his screen now all the time and just cut us off. And it's
Well, it was just funny. Rob was like right in the middle of telling a story, and you made enough noise that it switched to just your empty desk. You're just like, and Rob's just like, well, I guess I'll just go screw myself, I guess.
you guys think I sit here and listen to Rob talk? No. Now you know. Every time Rob talks, I just get up and leave the room, and I come back.
That's what I'm telling you guys.
Oh my God! All right. So what's next? Do I need to go back to more photos for you guys? It's still Rob, say something.
It's what the people want, man. No, you got it locked on me.
I don't know how I did that.
Well,
I don't.
Lucky for all these people, they get to look at me the rest of the time.
Cancel.
Oh, there we go.
Did that work? All right. Guys, we get
Lock on
loopy.
me
It's
for a
getting
minute,
late
man. I don't
now.
mind. I don't mind. Y'all can put it on me for a while. That's cool.
West Texas Rednecks.
Where we
Ooh.
going?
All right.
I got to be honest with you. I don't even remember who everybody is. I mean, I know that's like Kurt Hennig, and that's like one of these is Kendall Windham. I feel like that's the one on the left. And I can't remember who. Well, there's Barry Windham, obviously. But I don't remember. Do you guys remember?
Mm-mm.
Rob, where were you during all of this? Was this like when you were overseas?
Probably deployed, yeah.
Okay. I was gonna say, you look like every time you see one of these, you're like, I have no idea what that is.
I'm like, this is someone did that. I'm like, I'm still stuck on armbands, man. I'm like, what is this?
This is the
This is like the WWE, the faction known as the WWE.
well, this is actually the Alliance. This is when WCW and ECW, after they both got purchased by the WWE, they joined together to form the Alliance to try to take over WWE or F or whatever it was at the time. And then Stone Cold turned on everybody and became their leader. And they had that weird segment where they sang "Wind Beneath My Wings." It was real weird. Do you recall that? Here's the chat room. Let's see. Joe Hendry.
Bobby Duncan is the guy.
Bobby Duncan. Yeah. Rap is crap. I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
This is where J. Cal got his name for his blog. The Alliance.
Man, I always
Nope.
thought that was a Star Wars reference, J. Cal.
Yeah, me too.
Look at DDP there. He's just looking fed up with it. WCW. There's Chavo back there, Stasiak, and Shot O'Hare, Billy Kidman, some Booker T. He had the WCW title and the US title there. Anyway,
I hated that. I hated that WCW logo.
Yeah, it's kind of stupid looking.
I just didn't like it.
Who are these guys? Yeah, just kidding.
I love the Freebirds.
It's not the Freebirds, bro.
Yes, it is, Gary. Yes, it is.
That's I guess that's called Team Edge. I don't know really what that was called. Did they have a name? La Familia. What? Really? I don't recall that. I mean, Vicky Guerrero, Teddy Long there, Chavo.
People were fascinating, man. Though.
Some of these like bring back weird ass memories that I've forgot about. I do love Edge wearing the Chavo shirt though. That's nice. And he has a luchador belt buckle.
I've got a. You know what? I'm just gonna get up.
See ya.
All right.
I heard that.
Just gonna leave it on that.
Yeah,
Oh, there he
just
is.
leave it-
That's cool. That's cool. I'm here representing Manscaped. we're gonna do a Manscaped deep dive here for the rest of the night.
Okay, let's unspotlight that video.
Cut the feed. Cut the feed.
I want to show you guys. Last time we were in Tulum, Mexico, I picked up this really awesome set of coasters, and they are all like little
Oh, nice.
luchador masks. You know, I don't want to break the original packaging, but you can kind of see, and they got different colors. You got an orange, a green, a purple. Some say purple. I say periwinkle. You got a yellow. It's cool.
I love talking to Rob.
Yeah,
He
he's
makes
fun.
me happy.
Oh man, y'all
It's
are punks.
Hey, so
I
I
was
got
being
something.
serious.
I got something. We were joking about factions called the WWE, and then there was the WCW faction. Did you guys know? Because I didn't know this until I was looking at some lists online. But the NWA was a faction in WWE at one point.
Yes.
I didn't know that. I don't.
Yeah,
remember.
I actually wanted to bring that up. Yeah, go ahead.
They brought it in. They brought Ricky and Robert in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a faction. It was actually, and that's one we made that point on a couple of shows ago on a podcast called "This Is the NWA Podcast," where we said that one of the reasons that we called the Wilderness Years was because there was a time when the NWA was used as a gimmick almost, like a faction, like it was in the WWF at the time, I suppose.
Well, here's the write-up in this blog post I found. It says the NWA faction failed to connect with WWE fans, likely due to featuring wrestlers such as an increasingly unmotivated Barry Windham, the aging Rock and Roll Express. Now, if they were aging back then, what are they now? And the decently talented, decidingly uncharismatic Dan Severn. So,
wow, they were.
Sorry, J. Cal. I know he left, but
Hold on. They called Dan Severn uncharismatic.
Oh my god.
Oh, and Jeff Jarrett.
I don't want to hear anybody talk shade on Dan Severance ever again.
Severance. Oh gosh.
That is, for you guys don't know, that is J. Cal's man right there. He loves Dan Severn, and he should.
What is happening?
That's the new Midnight Express, but allow me, let's see. Let's see what we get here.
Ooh, this is dangerous. You got safe search on?
I know. I think this is the new British Invasion, which has our champion Nick Aldis in it.
That's radio.
That Tom York.
That's right.
By the way, I don't know if you noticed, but I think the champ has joined us in the chat, guys.
That's why I'm doing this, Rob. But thanks for catching up.
Oh, the joke. Oh, man, I'm done now. I'm just going to sit here and just be.
Sounds good.
Yeah, but Double J was in this. Am I still screen sharing here? There's Double J. It's the worst picture. There you go.
Yeah.
You guys got to go back, if you haven't, you're in the chat. Go back and listen to the What's Causing All This episode with Doug Williams when they actually go into the British invasion and all that. And there's a point where Aldous talks about how there was a recommendation. I can't remember. Maybe I'm confusing episodes, but they were like, hey, call somebody a bloke or something. It's like, well, that's not what typically we say. You don't go and just say, hey, bloke. So it's kind of fun, but I love that talk about British invasion.
Ooh, look at that. Like, popped right up with there. Doug Williams wants NWA title showdown with Nick Aldis.
Of course,
there's something to look forward to. Maybe that'll still happen. Just kick back in. You know, Nick, you're saying that right as we get to the British invasion stuff, that this is fascinating. So I don't know if you realize how that looks. I'm just saying. There we go. Look at that baby-faced Nick Aldis, Doug Williams, and Rob Terry, I believe. It's very, very big boy. But they were very successful. So just give them their just due.
They had some epic matches with Beer Money.
That is correct.
Yeah, so it's really underlooked, man. I mean, legitimately. I mean, I'm surprised that hadn't come out. But is that? I guess there's 3 men in it, so it's a faction.
Yeah, but there was another version of this British invasion. I'm pretty positive, and maybe the champ can shed some light on this. I'm missing it. I'm trying to find pictures of it. I feel like, or no, maybe I'm thinking of it was called like the Elite or something like that, but not the Elite like you're thinking of. But it had like trust me on this. I'm trying to find it right now as we're talking, but I can't remember. Maybe Aldous can tell us. I should have researched this a little bit better, but it had like I swear to God, it had like Homicide and Eric Young and anyway. But yeah, see, Nick Aldis is saying in the chat we were part of a short-lived stable called the World Elite. There you go. See, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, thanks, Rob. There you go.
I'm just thinking out loud.
Look at that. Really weird editing job on this picture. Aldis looks like he is a very tiny man. In that one.
Gosh, man, it's fascinating. Nah, I'm not. I'm serious, man. Like,
hey, Champ, if you're still in the chat, who is your favorite faction? We've gone through a ton. I mean, you're hitting us right now. You're like coming in at the latter part of the evening where we have like gone through every faction we could possibly think of. Did you guys establish who your favorite faction actually is, though? I mean, we took out Four Horsemen out of the equation because that felt obvious for everybody.
Yeah,
So
no,
did you have
I said the Freebirds if the Four Horsemen are out of the equation.
So Freebirds. Yeah, I don't think that applied today. Not with the flag and such.
yeah. I like the Freebirds.
Just throwing that out there.
And yet you got the armbands.
Oh yeah,
which y'all were all bragging about earlier. So
somebody was bragging about armbands.
I like.
Well, if you take anything away from this episode this week, is that Rob has a huge problem with armbands for some reason, and we don't know why. So he's disgusted with the Nexus. He thinks they're the worst.
Rob, I have a question. Are you okay with wristbands?
Wristbands are cool, man.
And that's not part of the arm, so that wouldn't be considered an armband.
Dang, I hate when you do that. I
mean,
I like the Freebirds. I like the Freebirds a lot. I'm trying to get this back on. I like the Freebirds a lot, but really, like one of the most entertaining factions was the Paul Jones Army. Man, I felt like I really liked Jimmy Valiant. I thought all that stuff was so meaningful. The hair versus hair matches, the bringing in a Big Mama, seeing the Shasta Watley or the Pistol Pez Watley and the Manny Fernandez heel turns. That was completely unexpected because Manny Fernandez was so beloved and Pistol Pez was so beloved. That was pretty freaking cool, man. I mean, I like the Paul Jones Army faction. That was kind of neat.
Yeah, so I wanted to point out that in the chat, the Champ has chimed in with his, and he said Four Horsemen they're the goats, DX, Freebirds, and he thought the corporation was low key cool AF. So yeah, and I'm with you on the corporation. Actually, we didn't even talk about the ministry, by the way. Much less the corporate ministry. But
yeah,
where was Rob Stinson at that time? Like, I love Rob when you get him riled up about some stuff that offends him. How did you feel about that Stone Cold angle with the ministry?
It's one of those things where I'm not trying to throw shade on anybody or offend anybody or anything like that, or people have their taste. But for me, like at that point in my life, I wasn't as offended as I'm not offended at it. It's just, to me, it's not palatable for me in my household where I'm at now. At the time, I bought into all. I mean, I was as into that. I was at a different place then, and I wasn't trying to safeguard and control the content that my kids are absorbing, that kind of thing. So I was never really offended by it. But now, it's those things when we get into being irreligious, or when we get to being I don't even want to say irreligious, just being less than reverent about certain things. I'm cautious, but again, I don't want you to think that like I'm some holier than thou. Like I've got my kids in a box and everything. We have a baseball idol. We have this worship routine before Braves games. It's completely flippant, but I'm not some like monk in a cloister that doesn't like anything that's unholy or anything. I like horror movies, but it's just one of those things where I don't know. It depends on how I feel. I was never really offended by it though.
What's weird about that is like somebody asked me the other day is like, if you could describe Dr. Robert Stinson, how would you describe him? And I said, like, he seems like a monk in a cloister that's offended by everything. So this is really odd that you just said that. Hey, how about the main event Mafia? Our champ was in the main event Mafia. The second incarnation. Can you tell me who was in the first?
I'm still trying to digest the whole monk in the cloister comment. I'm like, hold on now. We're just going to segue and you're just drop that and then move. Who asked you that and why would you say that?
That didn't happen, Rob.
I'm just kidding.
It was a terrible joke. It was something I saw on TikTok. Oh man. So nobody's gonna answer. Do you have an answer? Do you remember the main event Mafia?
I don't have an answer.
The OGs. What?
No answer.
You asking the chat?
The original, as I recall, was Kurt Angle. It was Sting. It was Kevin Nash and Booker T. And Scott Steiner. Maybe. I think Scott Steiner was in that first version. But like Samoa Joe joined them at one point. He was in the version that Nick Aldis was in. Were you guys not watching your Total Nonstop Action at this time? Sting, Kurt Angle, Samoa Joe, Magnus, Rampage.
I'm just looking at the Wikipedia article on it right now. Just trying to look at. Gosh, man, that faction was stacked.
It was. That was the idea. That's why they were called the Main Event Mafia.
Yeah. See what they did there.
They were all already main events.
Yeah.
It's weird. Like Joe and Aldis feel like the youngest people in that group, or like they were the ones getting the elevation for being in that group.
Rampage's name has come up a lot in a lot of the Carney Lane content. It seems like I've heard his name a bunch. Several people have mentioned him recently.
I see Katra unit mentioned in the chat. That's an MLW faction, right? I feel like I've seen them, but like Joseph Samuel, let's see. We're digging now. Like we were trying to find the last bit of factions. Dave Wills in the chat was not watching TNA. Says Rob Stinson's a great man. I don't know why he would say that.
He's right.
Okay, so Aldis is saying in the second version of the Main Event Mafia, the idea was the past, present, and future main eventers. So that makes a lot of sense with that lineup.
They got it right. If we can get Joe in a main event.
Where did Rampage Jackson fall in there?
Was he? He was in the second iteration, right? Rampage was, or was he in the? Okay. Okay, yeah, I'm looking at that now. Sting, Kurt, Samoa Joe, Magnus, and Rampage. I remember. I mean, I just vaguely remember this. I wasn't following TNA super closely at the time, but that's cool.
You know what's really cool though? If I could show you a little something here. That's really cool. And nothing about those outfits is cool. It's all the people wearing them. That's what's cool.
What do you mean the outfits aren't cool? The outfits are way cool.
No other person in the world can pull off jorts and a leather jacket
Oh yeah. Wait till y'all tune into the next episode of This Is the NWA Podcast After Dark, and you'll see what Stinson Doc McLovin brings to you. I'm coming in shorts and leather jacket.
Yeah. New Day gets some love. We'll mention them earlier. Oh, Straight Edge Society. Forgot all about those guys. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That is not a faction, but I guess that's the Heenan family there, Andre and Bobby Heenan. And there's Rick Rude. Okay, so they're showing it. So the Brain Busters were apparently considered part of the Heenan family. I guess that's accurate.
Yeah. So then we get into the is this a stable or a faction? Because did they really collaborate with the other members of the Heenan family at that time?
Yeah, that feels like more of a stable.
Well, it was, but then, like I said, there was that build going up to WrestleMania 7 that time, I remember. And like Heenan was like sending everybody after Boss Man. Like he had to defeat every member in Heenan family. Aldis forgot about the 97 Hart Foundation, and they have now entered the favorites.
They're up there, man. They are Hart Foundation. I can't believe it took us so long to bring them up. You know, I was an NWA guy, so I never really felt the connection to them emotionally like I did with guys like the Freebirds and the Horsemen and all that. But man, Hart Foundation is comparable to anything out there.
Yeah, Aldis also brings up the Heenan, you know, with the Heenan family, make a cool statement that is one I actually subscribe to, that Bobby Heenan is the greatest all-around talent in wrestling history, he says. So
what about I'd like to get the champ's estimation of where Paul Ellering would fit in that.
Paul Ellering.
Precious Paul Ellering, yeah. He's
because I guess I was about to say, well, yeah, I mean, but Ellering was a worker. Like he was a in-ring talent as well as a manager.
Right.
That's interesting. But nobody could talk like Bobby the Brain, right? That's another topic for one day.
Yeah.
Just running through managers, I feel like.
Yeah, Bobby could talk, man. He always had a gravity about him, but he's also real funny all the time. Like I'd just be rolling listening to him, you know. And he is, man. You're right. As far as talents, he may be the greatest of all time, all around. But Paul Ellering, though, it's like when he was just like sinister and dark, and he was very very deliberate about things, and he always felt like he was concocting some sort of dark plan, even though, you know, when he was with the Road Warriors, he was, I guess, a baby face. But man, he was good too. And being a worker, kind of like Paul Jones too. You know, Paul Jones had worked also, and then became that brilliant manager of the Army.
Yeah, Aldis did respond to your thing. Did you see that there? In regards to Ellering, good manager, but is an all-around talent, wrestler, manager, commentator, host. Heenan's untouchable.
Yeah, oh for sure. Yeah.
This Camp Cornette thing, man. I see Mike Lancaster talking about that, and I'm going to be honest with you. I vaguely remember that. I remember Owen and Yoko holding the tag team titles. Was that during this time? I remember that being a thing. And I remember Cornette managing Yoko along with Mr. Fuji, but I don't remember like Camp Cornette being a thing. And I remember him being the reason that the NWA was brought in. I remember he kind of backed that up. He brought in.
He managed the Rock and Roll Express during that time, didn't he? That was, I remember that being kind of a real surreal thing where it was just weird, man. It's like, how is this possible? And what, you know, universe is this possible? So that I remember that was a big deal.
Super weird too, because he also brought in the new Midnight Express, which was like Bob Holly and who was the other one? Now I got to look it up. Let's see. Looking it up. This is exciting. This is exciting TV. We appreciate everybody who's still hanging out with us.
I think every time now that we have a little break, I'll just start naming the 62 members of the NWO. Scott
Thank
Hall,
God for
Evan Nash,
Bart Gunn.
Hulk
Bart
Hogan.
Gunn was not in the NWO. Bart Gunn was in the New Midnight Express with Bob Holly. So that's who it was. I could not remember.
He was probably.
Thanks for stopping
honestly,
by, Nick Aldis. We do appreciate you.
Honestly, he was
Thank you,
probably
champ.
in the NWO too. You never know. This is a long list.
Yeah. But thanks to everybody who pointed out Bart Gunn. Yeah, I could not remember for the life of me. How about that guy's career? That was a bummer. Where he like knocked out Dr. Death and won the Tough Enough competition and then got laid out by Butterbean. I remember that. Yeah, but good for him. The Bodacious Bart and Bombastic Bob. That is such a pull from history. Like, I'd forgotten that that was even a thing that happened. That's so weird. Yeah, Dave's right. He says, when you get stuck, look at the chat. The answer's probably here before Google gives it to you. No, you've been 100% right. The chat has been awesome. I've loved that part of this deal. That's why we're even here. We're not like, trying to make some video that's going to be long lasting, like for like lots of views 6 years down the road. We're hanging out with you guys. This is just a bunch of people getting together and chilling and talking about wrestling. But yeah, that Bart Gunn knockout did kill Dr. Death's career, as James Lawrence pointed out. Feels like, you know, I feel like maybe I'm crazy, but I feel like I remember him coming back in WCW for a little while there when he was like going to be managed by that awful JR parody, Oklahoma. Remember that?
That's right. No, you're right. Another thing about Gary Hart too. Remember Gary Hart? He ended up coming back and doing had a pretty important faction in NWA, WCW right around 1989 with Terry Funk and the Great Muta, and they never really did tag team from time to time, but they pretty much operated as different workers. You know, with Funk going after Flair and Muta going after Sting. You guys remember that?
That does ring a bell, yeah.
Vaguely
Because we
remember
did
that.
he was there at Future Shock when we did Starcade.
Yep.
He was in that, so.
That's right. Let's see here. I'm just for fun, since we're winding down here, I'm going to Google worst wrestling factions. See what they give us. I'm sure we've had to have mentioned everybody at some point, but could be fun. God dang, right off the bat, I forgot about, sorry, Rob.
Go ahead.
The Core. Remember the Core? That used to be, it was part of the Nexus, but when it was like CM Punk took over the Nexus, but then like Wade Barrett started the opposing force, and it was called the Core, and they had literally the worst logo. I'm looking it up. It was terrible.
The Core.
Yeah, I hope you're ready for this. I got it.
I feel like there was something with Vampiro there in the latter days of the WCW. There was something with Vampiro and maybe
Ugh, that's
he
ugly.
was in a faction.
What kind of logo is that?
That's too many
Who
R's.
would buy that? The core.
They didn't even spell it right.
Yeah.
No regrets.
What happens when you? That's what happens when you go get a logo from Fiverr.com. That's what you get. Call me if you need a logo. That's what I'm saying. I'll get you a logo.
Maybe you should get on Fiverr.
Nah.
Oh. Okay, well, the next one. Go. No, who was about to talk? Was that you, Rob?
I was just trying to ask that somebody in the chat chime in. I seem to remember Vampiro being in a faction. I can't remember. This is like right towards the end, like in the Thunder era, right before they ended up going off.
J Cal, hit me up. I'll get you a logo, man. DM me.
Did he ask for a logo, or did you just offer that randomly?
Yes.
No, I just called him out. I just intuition. He said he needed a logo in the chat.
Yes, the answer to your question in the chat, by the way, was number Crypto Zoo Baller was number 10 worst. And the site I'm using is Bleacher Report.
.com
.net.
Or .net.
Yeah. Number 9, worst faction of all time, according to Bleacher Report, X Factor. X Factor. It was X-Pac, Just Incredible, and Albert. I remember they had a weird theme song. You remember that? It sounded like it was by like Uncle Cracker or something like that. It was real weird.
Now that is Dr. Stenson's favorite music artist. Don't talk about Uncle Cracker.
I was literally, as I said it, I was like, Stetson gets down to Uncle Cracker. I know he does.
He does.
Why not? Guys? What about the Misfits in action? Did we talk about them?
We did not.
Somebody mentioned them in the chat.
I don't even want to say it because like some of the stuff is like so inappropriate but you had like Major Guns, you had Lieutenant Loco, Sergeant AWOL, The Wall, Corporal Cajun, Lash LaRue.
G-Rection.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that. Hugh Morris, G.I.
Really?
Bro.
Erection. That was your line.
Major Stack. I'm just gonna keep going. Major Guns, Tylene Buck, big Tylene Buck fan. Lieutenant Loco, Chavo Guerrero. This says here in this write-up on Wikipedia that they had the shortest reign for the now retired WCW World Tag Team Championship, which was Lash LaRue and Chavo Guerrero, Lieutenant Loco and Corporal Cajun. All this seems so derogatory. I don't even know. This would not fly today.
Yeah, probably not. But that was during that Crash TV era. Yeah. And they feuded, I remember, with the Canadian team. It was just like headed up by Storm. Like Hacksaw turned on the U.S. to join Canada.
Yeah, that was kind of cool, man. I was a soldier at the time, so it was like it would rile me the heck up to see that. But that's good. That's what that's their intent. So.
I'm not gonna lie, I actually vividly remember WCW during that time period. I was kind of into that group and their camo, and then eventually we didn't mention this, but like I remember Booker T joined them as GI Bro, and that was apparently like one of his first gimmicks or something like that. But he brought it back to like team with him. I remember that.
Hugh Morris too, man. He had gone from like being sort of mid-card, undercard status, becoming a pretty big deal. He was always fun. I liked Hugh Morris, the Laughing Man. And so this was kind of, this sort of elevated him. Of course, by this time, I think he'd already been elevated, but he's one of those ones that's like, doesn't get enough credit.
I don't think I'm breaking new ground here by saying this, but because I feel like maybe I've seen this somewhere, but he's also like pretty responsible for like Goldberg, like as far as like he was like Goldberg's first big opponent or something, and he just made Goldberg look like $1 million in there, and then I think they put him with Goldberg like 3 or 4 times just to. Even though Goldberg was having these short matches, but also, he got his time. He was a trainer for a long time, like at NXT and that sort of stuff, the Performance Center. Number 8, Los Boricuas. Remember them? Yeah. Led by Savio Vega after he got fired from the Nation of Domination, apparently. Miguel Perez, Jesus Castilla, and Jose Estrada Jr. They feuded with the Nation of Domination and another faction we haven't mentioned, the Disciples of Apocalypse, the DOA. Them. Their biggest achievement, though, according to Bleacher Report, they won Worst Feud of the Year against Disciples of Apocalypse in 1997.
That's quite an accomplishment.
Yep. Okay, how about the next one, which is Truth Commission? Truth Commission. Yeah, they were led by Jackal. It had like Kurgan in it. Remember them? No? Probably that's why they're one of the worst. The Oddities made the list here. And Right to Censor, we've talked about them. The Job Squad shows up. This is an interesting one. Job Squad, it says, so Al Snow concocts an idea. I'm tired of being a jobber. I don't get good matches. I lose all the time. I'm in a revolt. So I'm going to get Scorpio. You lose all the time too. So you're ideal. Gilberg, you'll never do anything. You're in. And Bob, whoever you are, you can be here too. And that's it. That's the Job Squad. Gilberg did go on to win the light heavyweight championship, just for the record there. Recon, Bull, Buchanan, and Kurgan. Thank you, Damian Redmond. Damian Redmond in the chat, man. Have you been in here all the time? Like, I mean, I know you've been in here all night tonight, but you are like a freaking encyclopedia over there. Dave Scooby brought up Master P and the No Limit Soldiers. I feel like that somebody casually mentioned them earlier, but that was fun. And let's see here. We talked a little, J-Cal, about Raven's Flock and the Blue World Order. They came in during an NWO discussion. Raven's Flock, I just mentioned that it was, what an easy deal, just having to sit at ringside. I actually really dug Raven's Flock, by the way. An indie show in my small town. Those guys came, and I don't know what these people are like in real life, but I thought Raven was awesome. And I loved Scotty Riggs and Kidman, like the Shooting Star Press, which at the time was called the 7-Year Itch, as I recall. Anyway.
Yeah. 7-Year Itch. That sounds like my whole military career. I feel like I had the 7-year itch that my entire tenure.
Good.
I love it.
Hey, one we haven't talked about, maybe on that list you're reading, the League of Nations.
Let me tell you what the next one is real quick. It's the Nation, and I think that's garbage. Yeah, it's the Nation of Domination.
No way. I was talking about the League of Nations. Remember them? The faction of it was Wade Barrett and Alberto Del Rio, Rusev, and Sheamus. And they were literally created just to put Roman Reigns over. It was ridiculous.
It was stupid, but that's actually like, it should have been good. I remember when the team first formed and they like beat the hell out of Roman Reigns. And I was like, man, that's actually kind of a cool faction. Like all of those guys are pretty sick. And no, this WWE wanted those guys to all just be pretty sick jobbers. That's what they wanted. It's terrible.
Terrible. Yeah, I agree. The Nation shouldn't be on that list.
Okay, so
BleacherReport.com.
I'm reading over this. It's acting like this is when Farouk was kicked out. And it says somehow WWE Creative thought that an Owen Hart heel turn and subsequent co-leadership of the new group, simply named The Nation with The Rock, would be a good idea. And then lots of other advocates joined, like Crush and Savio Vega. And so it basically became like, what are you even doing now? So anyway.
Well, that's a little better. If they're not talking about the Farouk Nation domination.
And if you're interested, the very last of the worst of the WWE factions is the Union. During the Deadly Game tournament to crown a new WWE champion, Shane McMahon turned on Mankind in the finals, siding with The Rock and assisting him in winning the title, thus forming the corporation. They dominated WWE through 98 into the 99. However, due to conflicting egos between the McMahons, the group disintegrated, causing Shane McMahon to merge with the Undertaker's Ministry of Darkness to form the corporate ministry. During this process, corporation members, The Rock, Mankind, Pat Patterson, Gerald Briscoe, Test, Ken Shamrock, and Big Show got ousted. Due to the corporate rejection, former members, Mankind, Ken Shamrock, Big Show, and Test decided to stand up to the dominance of the corporate ministry and form a faction called the Union, carrying 2x4 boards as a sign of unity against them. And it failed. It lasted a month.
We saw a picture of them earlier, didn't we? Wasn't there photos?
I think we did, yeah.
And we all just kind of went, and then we went to the next one.
Right, exactly.
They didn't have armbands.
All right. Well,
they're cool.
Yeah. Can I Google factions with armbands? Is that wrestling factions with armbands? Why do some wrestlers wear armbands? That came up in Squared Circle on Reddit. But anyway, guys, we got to start wrapping this thing up. It's getting late. It's midnight. Will and I have to work tomorrow. Rob, who knows what the hell he's doing. But we want to thank everybody for hanging out. I mean, the chat stays strong throughout. You guys have been here. You've been doing your thing. I hope you hit subscribe. I hope you hit like on the video. I hope you're following the NWA Pod. It's at the NWA Pod. We love you guys. And this and nights like tonight are strictly meant to keep the community together because it's rough times in wrestling, but in the NWA specifically is what we're concerned about. So we just want to have like hangouts, have a beer, chill with us. Let's talk wrestling, whatever you guys want. We're going to start doing, I think the poll thing we all enjoyed. So that'll start probably being a thing. We'll do a poll, see what you guys want to talk about that night. And we'll throw it in and we'll do something just like this where we talk about literally every freaking faction that's ever existed. I think that we managed that this evening. And but anyway, again, thank you all for joining. Will, tell them where they can find you online.
At Hey It's Will on Twitter and at Real Hey It's Will on TikTok.
He is pushing the tic-tac. I should have saved that for you, Rob. You go ahead. You let him have
Now, I am at R Stinson 4. And guys, if you enjoyed this talk tonight, this is just, I'm going to tell you, when the NWA gets back out of hiatus, you're going to see factions. I mean, the NWA has always been a tag team organization. You're going to see great tag teams and factions in the future. We've got Strictly Business now. I know that the leadership in the company, guys like William Patrick Corrigan and, of course, Nick Aldis and Josephus and Tim Storm and Maureen Tracy. They are already at work right now, getting ready to get this thing back up and running. But in the meantime, we are carrying the weight. We aren't going anywhere because the NWA is not going anywhere. It's been here forever, and it's going to be here forever. And, next week, we may be talking about the greatest mask wrestlers of all time. We got one of the greatest of all time right now in the NWA with the question mark. I said it, one of the greatest of all time. We may be talking about the greatest managers of all time. We've got some of the emerging ones right now with the Pope. We may talk about some of the greatest swerves or betrayals or heel turns of all time. Well, you saw the Nick Aldis, Tim Storm angle. The NWA is where it's at. It's not going anywhere. We appreciate you guys joining us tonight and conversing again. I think WWE Front Row said it best. NWA fam is strong, and it is strong, and it's not going anywhere, guys. We're here. We love you. Communicate with us on Twitter, on TikTok, on MySpace, on Napster, on LiveJournal, on My Book, on Snack Shack, on all of them, man, because we're there for you.
Him, Gary, you can mute him. You can just go on as the host.
I was all in on just how long that would go. Like with no pauses, he would
go ahead.
Just keep
Continue,
naming stuff.
And it's not just us, guys. It's not just the NWA pod. This is the NWA podcast. You got J Cal, who's been gracious with us tonight in the chat. J Cal has been there through tough times before. He's still out there. We support him. He's part of this family. All of you guys in the chat, man, you are so important to us. And make sure you check out Alliance Wrestling. Check out our stuff and check out Jay-Z Flair, some of these other guys that are pulling the labor right now and carrying their fair share of the burden. And we're going to get through this, guys. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, gives a J Cal says Stinson needs a link tree. Like we just need to get him a link tree link with like all these things, like 20 freaking things. Yeah, give props to your mods and their WWE Front Row. Always a pleasure to have you in here and just keeping things moving. He's also taking on that producer role, just like shooting me notes over here as we're talking. And appreciate that. Crypto Zoom Mauler, you have been so active. Damian Redmond as well. You guys have been killing it in the chat. Damian Redmond, a freaking encyclopedia of old WWE knowledge. That was really cool to have you in here talking. And everybody who's watching who's not chatting, we appreciate you too, even if you're just hanging out and just checking out the show and just leaving it on in the background while you do other crap, whatever. We still hope you're subscribed. All you got to do is hit that button. And just also make sure you hit like and just all we ask is share it. Just get more people in here. It's more fun. The more of you there are, the more these conversations go on and get exciting. I am at This Is Gary Horde on all of the stuff, and our show is at the NWA Pod. I've said this like 100 times, but I just want you to remember it. We appreciate you guys, and like Rob said, this is what keeps the NWA going right now. At this moment and this time, they need to know that the NWA fam, the hashtag NWA fam is strong, and we are here for them, waiting for them, anxiously awaiting for them to come back and give us more content. It's a struggle right now. You've seen it. Thanks, Dave, by the way. Dave Scooby, I meant to say that in the chat. But all right, that is it for tonight. I'm going to wrap it up, and we appreciate you. You guys have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow all over the interwebs. Until then, enjoy your gravy cake.